Chapter 1550. 2 years later. Han Fei stayed in the 10,000 Beast Tomb for 2 years. In fact, he had stayed in Forge the Universe for 16 years. The Cliff of the Holy Land was a place of worship for tens of thousands of beasts. Not many people came here. At this moment, the rock wall was shaking, and a blurry watermark appeared. At least 7 or 8 people from the Great Rift Gorge looked in the direction of the Cliff of Sage Realm when the Sage Realm trembled. Pop Han Fei stepped out of the Saint Realm, took a breath of the air of the outside world, and grinned. Seclusion is really not for humans. Han Fei didn't come up with it on his own. Before he came out, he even set up a spirit-gathering formation in the Tomb of Myriad Beasts and absorbed the energy for 3 days and 3 nights. There was no telling how much energy and spiritual energy it had swallowed and stuffed into Forge the Universe. However, at this moment, Han Fei had to come out, because the food in Forge the Universe had long been eaten up. During this period, in order to train the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and the others, he even split a few strands of his soul to control a few semi-venerable puppets, training them every day and polishing their foundations. Han Fei, on the other hand, had basically consumed all the energy resources in Forge the Universe in the past 8 years. Now, he was at the Exalt realm. The consumption of resources for cultivation could be said to be terrifying. Since he entered the Immortal Palace, Han Fei had basically been taking out resources. After 17 or 18 years of hard work, he still had to feed the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and supply the sea-quelling painting and the spiritual energy in the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm. Han Fei really couldn't take it anymore. In particular, most of the ingredients had been eaten by the Emperor Sparrow, and the spirit awakening fluid had also been drunk by it. In the end, there was nothing left to eat. The Emperor Sparrow held the supreme-grade demon stone in its mouth. From an average of 1 pill a month to 1 pill every 3 days. The little crow from before had now grown into a handsome black eagle. Even the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, who was much stronger than him, trembled all over. And in the past few years, because he had been polishing his foundation and fighting every day, the strength of the 9-tailed mantis shrimp had been squeezed to the limit. Even so, after 8 years, their growth speed was still not enough to satisfy Han Fei. The 9-tailed mantis shrimp reached level 64. Xiao Jin reached level 62. Little Fatty was level 62. Liquor level 63. Little Black and Little White had only leveled up once in 8 years and were only at level 74. As for the Emperor Sparrow, it had eaten its way to level 59. The most speechless thing was that this guy didn't want others to spar with him. Han Fei tried to practice with it. However, for some reason, half of the unformed chaotic chi collapsed, and Han Fei wasted a whole 3 months. However, none of the 6 of them had any new skills. By logic, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, Little Gold, and Little Fatty were all supposed to be law enforcers, but they didn't get any new battle techniques after that. Up until now, DK hadn't even used a single battle skill. Han Fei really wondered if this little guy was as powerful as he was said to be. And in the past 8 years, Han Fei's own growth was actually very limited. At the risk of further damage to his divine soul, he spent another 10,000 soul points to continue cultivating the invincible tyrant body and forcibly mastered the first level, Golden Bone Soul Fusion. Of course, the price was that it took him 8 years. Even when he visualized the god-scaring painting, he couldn't make up for the lost 10,000 points of soul points. So far, he had only made up a little more than 4,000 points. Therefore, in the past 8 years, Han Fei and the 9-tailed mantis shrimp had almost used up the energy resources in Forge the Universe and had to come out. Otherwise, their growth would be further restricted. Walking out of the 10,000 Beast Tomb, Han Fei looked at his information again. Compared with before he came in, his gains were extremely significant. Owner Han Fei level greater than 85, intermediate venerable, chaotic chi 36 spiritual power 99999/99999 limit of Taoist heart, perception range greater than 36,000 kilometers, power greater than 6,892 waves, first spiritual heritage unknown, second spiritual heritage unknown, first spiritual beast. Twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 74, second spiritual beast Emperor Sparrow, level 59, main art heaven stealing technique, level 6 avoid fishing, venerable level, divine quality. Han Fei heaved a long sigh. Alas, I have to go. Where are you going? Han Fei murmured to himself, but as soon as he said that, he saw that old goat was already standing on the top of the mountain. In the next moment, Elephant Tutong, Mad Lion, Yin Tsang, Golden Tiger, and Jiao Mengyue all flew over. Golden Tiger was shocked. How is this possible? There are still 3 years to the 5-year period. How did you come out? Yin Tsang took a breath and said, Bull Demon King, have you discovered the secret of the Saint Land? Hearing Yin Tsang's words, everyone stared at Han Fei. Everyone was too curious. No one had ever entered the Saint Land and came out within 5 years. Jiao Mengyue said in surprise, Huh? You made a breakthrough? Han Fei deliberately pretended that he had just made a breakthrough. In fact, as long as he wanted to, he could continue to improve. In the past 2 years, he had accumulated some power of faith, but he had never used it. Han Fei smiled and said, I made a breakthrough by luck. Everyone, I know you want to know the secret of the Saint Land. I did go there. But the deepest secret is not what you think it is. Wow! Even old Yang was very surprised. Han Fei admitted that he had been to the depths of the Saint Land, which meant that Han Fei had seen what was there. Mad Lion said, Tell us and we'll know, right? Golden Tiger also yelled, Yes. He was really anxious to death. Since you've been there, tell us. For a moment, everyone's tone was not very good. Even Jiao Mengyue looked at Han Fei in a strange way. Han Fei didn't panic at all. He just smiled lightly. In the deepest part there is a prophecy. Han Fei looked at old Yang and said, Darkness is coming, ominous things are shrouding, the Emperor's road has no return, and all races will be silent. Go find the way. Golden Tiger scratched his head. What do you mean? Yin Tsang narrowed his eyes. It doesn't sound like a good thing. Jiao Mengyue asked, Is there no other revelation? You only saw this prophecy? Old Yang coughed and said, Okay, all of you be quiet. He glanced at everyone to make them stop asking. Then old Yang looked at Han Fei. He knew that since Han Fei told him this, he must have a purpose. Otherwise, Han Fei could have easily found an excuse. Old Yang looked at Han Fei and said, It doesn't sound like a good prophecy. Then do you know how to solve this dilemma since you've seen the secrets in the depths? Han Fei shook his head. There are too many problems to solve. The only way I know is to find a way, and this way may be in the human race. Huh! Jiao Mengyue and the others looked at each other in bewilderment. Mad Lion said in disbelief, Human race? The human race has almost been wiped out, hasn't it? The city of the immortal is already a mess. How can they be as strong as us? Old Yang asked, Why are you sure it's a human race? Han Fei suddenly smiled and said, Me? Old Yang, do you know who the god of war is? Mad Lion and the others were all shocked, and Golden Tiger even exclaimed, Who? The god of war. The legendary god of war? Xiang Tantan asked, Isn't he a character in our ancestors' story? Jiao Mengyue asked, Is there really a god of war? Old Yang nodded slightly. Yes. But the god of war is not the god of the beast race, is he? Shouldn't the god of the beast race be the beast emperor? Han Fei said, 100,000 years ago, the beast race, the sky clan, the demonic plant clan, the giant clan, and the human race coexisted in this world. Among them, the giant clan believed in the god of war, and the other clans had long lost their faith. Therefore, the god of war was the only hope of all clans. In the depths of this 10,000 beast tomb is the god of war altar. And I only got the word human from it. Old Yang immediately realized Han Fei's purpose. Han Fei wanted the entire beast race to stand on the side of the human race, because Han Fei was a human. However, he was not going to expose him, because since Han Fei wanted the beast race to stand on the side of the human race, first of all, he had to help them get out of the cage. Old Yang certainly didn't focus on the city of the immortal. He set his eyes outside the cage. If Han Fei could help the beast race get out of the cage, so what if the beast race stood on the side of the human race? After all, 100,000 years ago, the ancestors seemed to be on this person's side. Han Fei looked at Old Yang, who was calculating something. Golden Tiger and the others didn't even dare to breathe, for fear that they would disturb Old Yang's calculation. After a while, Old Yang slightly opened his eyes and looked at Han Fei. You have to go to the human race. Han Fei nodded. Yes, I have to go to the human race. Just like that, the two began to act. The reason why Han Fei said so much was that he wanted Old Yang to know that he was going to the human race. It wasn't as simple as going to the human race. Old Yang's promise meant that the Demon Beast Alliance might resume cooperation with the City of the Immortal in the future. Therefore, the two only mentioned going to the human race and nothing else. If Han Fei could promise good news in the future, it was possible for the beast race and the human race to reconcile. Yin Tsang said, "To the City of the Immortal?" Jiao Mengyue said, "Brother Niu happens to have a human bloodline and can perfectly transform into a human form. We can't even go to the saint land of the beast race. But Brother Niu went there. Does it mean that the saint land can only be entered by a human bloodline?" Jiao Mengyue's conjectures made Yin Tsang and the others fall into deep thought. Golden Tiger said, "Brother Niu, is it dangerous? Going to the City of the Immortal alone? I'm afraid it's not appropriate. Do you want us to go with you? That way we'll be more confident." Mad Lion was speechless. "Do you think you're going to fight?" Han Fei said, Everyone has their own destiny. I feel that it may take some time to go there. If there is any news, I will definitely come back to inform you." Chapter 1551. The news of Han Fei's coming out couldn't be hidden, and there was no need to hide it. The demonic beasts were straightforward. With the old goat and Han Fei echoing each other, the demonic beasts all unconditionally believed the old goat and agreed with Han Fei's statement. Besides, Han Fei's statement was somewhat true. It didn't seem to be made up. Some things were even ancient rumors of the beast. In any case, they thought, the Bull Demon King shouldn't be able to make up these things. Once these strong masters believed Han Fei didn't need to worry about the rest. These big shots would explain for him. One day later, outside the Great Rift Gorge, 100 venerables gathered and barbecued together. Everyone had a tacit understanding. Someone had already informed them about the demonic beast's holy land. When they learned that the Bull Demon King was going to the Immortal City, they were surprised. However, on second thought, it seemed to be reasonable. The Bull Demon King's sudden appearance and killing 7 demonic beasts in a row in the Life and Death Gorge had already shocked everyone. With this strength, it seemed reasonable that Han Fei could enter the depths of the Holy Land and make a prophecy that no one understood. Of course, because of the old goat, it deliberately connected the prophecy with Han Fei, and then the beasts and the human race. Therefore, when the venerables saw Han Fei, many of them gave him a look that said, "Take care, my good brother." For them, the Bull Demon King was a figure who suddenly appeared. His identity and background could be said to be legendary. Could it be that such a figure was the so-called timely emergence? Crocodile Tai even patted Han Fei on the shoulder and said, "Brother Niu, I never expected that fate would put such a heavy burden on you. Don't worry, I will definitely help you take good care of Niu Dali." Han Fei rolled his eyes. "No. There's nothing between me and Niu Dali." Crocodile Tai said disdainfully, "Brother Niu, it's not that I want to criticize you. For the sake of the future, you should leave a descendant for yourself now. Otherwise, what if your water buffalo clan has no descendants? Han Fei said angrily. Who are you cursing? Crocodile Tai shrugged and said via voice transmission, Dolly is here. You deal with it yourself. Han Fei turned his head and saw Nyo Dolly coming with Nyo Kursin and Nyo Panpan. Because the water buffalo tribe only had the three of them left. Because there were no bulls, as long as Nyo Dolly did not marry other beasts, the water buffalo race might really decline. However, Han Fei remembered that there were water buffaloes in the underground city of the Scattered Stars Island. Although their strength was relatively low, at least they had the water buffaloes. Nyo Dolly walked straight to Han Fei. As a domineering bull, Nyo Dolly looked straight at Han Fei and asked, When are you leaving? Han Fei smiled. Today. Nyo Dolly was slightly stunned. Did they have to leave in such a hurry? She looked at the Bull Demon King and said bluntly, Are you sure you don't want to say anything? Han Fei's eyes were firm. He didn't care what Nyo Dolly was doing. I'm not a bull. Even if he was awesome, shouldn't he talk about love? You're going to sacrifice yourself for the continuation of your race? It was 2F** King Great. Han Fei shook his head. I have nothing to say. My name is the Demon King, and I was born for the King's Tao. Moreover, I already have a true love, so I can't tolerate her. The water buffalo race will not die out. I believe that there are still other bulls outside the cage. Nyo Panpan snorted angrily. Sister, let's ignore him. Nyo Kursin also glared at Han Fei. Go pursue your king's path. Our water buffalo tribe, even without men, can still live well. We will eventually grow up. Han Fei grinned. That's good. While the venerables were drinking, Han Fei and Old Goat stood by the Great Rift Gorge for a while, then turned around, tore the void, and went to the immortal city of the human race. When Han Fei entered the void, many people sighed gloomily. Someone said, He is indeed a man of destiny. How can there be such a coincidence in the world? He came, made an amazing achievement, then entered the Saint Realm, and then left. Someone sighed. I think Brother Nyo's path is not easy. We can fight day in and day out, and that's the extent of the situation. But Brother Nyo is different. He was instructed by the god of war. Old Goat also looked in the direction where Han Fei left and sighed slightly. I hope you don't let me down. Going to the immortal city of the human race, and going to the Life and Death Gorge were two completely different directions. Han Fei traveled a full 6 million kilometers, hunted a lot of marine creatures, and refilled the heaven-transformed heaven and earth with food. During this period, Han Fei met beast venerables who were patrolling the sea area 3 times. Maybe because Old Goat had already greeted them, or maybe because they didn't know each other, Han Fei set off again after a brief chat. When Han Fei traveled more than 7 million kilometers, he found that there were fewer marine creatures here. Even in the beast territory, there were still a lot of marine creatures. In fact, the beasts also needed them, for one thing, to train their soldiers, and for another, to provide enough food for the Beast Island. These marine creatures were different from ordinary food. There were a large number of explorers' sea beasts among them. Their essence was in their flesh and blood, and they were all great tonic. The beasts had always been moderate, so many sea beasts at least had space to live. However, at this time, Han Fei sensed that there were less than 3,000 marine creatures within 30,000 kilometers, so he knew that he should be close to the immortal city. Compared to the territory of the beasts, how could a mere 3,000 creatures cross 30,000 kilometers? Han Fei stopped and appeared on the water. At this time, he saw an island, a small island with a radius of only a few hundred kilometers. Compared to the vast sea area, an island with a radius of a few hundred kilometers was naturally considered a small island. However, this island didn't look like a normal island. Because it wasn't sealed, it was eroded by the strong wind, leaving only bare rock walls and a scene of dead silence. Han Fei walked in those valley cracks, and what surprised him was that there should have been a lot of people living here. Skeletons of experts littered the ground, almost covering the entire valley. Why are there so many bones? The bones that could resist the erosion of the strong wind and violent energy at least showed that they had some strength. After thousands of years, they could still stay here, indicating that these bones were more or less strong when they were alive. Not to mention that everyone was an explorer, even a law enforcer couldn't escape. Han Fei didn't stay for long. The environment was so harsh, without the slightest vitality, indicating that this island was an abandoned dead island. Even the undead wouldn't stay here. After all, there was violent energy of heaven and earth scouring every moment. No one would like this place. After traveling more than 300,000 kilometers, Han Fei found another island. This time, when Han Fei ascended to the void and scanned with his perception, he found that there were dozens of islands next to this island. There are many islands in the Immortal City? In the Beast King Valley, there were actually not many islands. The Beast Island was big enough, so the old sheep didn't bother to get a new island. Different from the previous island, there was a seal on the island Han Fei was on now. This meant that it was difficult for the raging energy between heaven and earth to penetrate this island. Therefore, from the outside, this island looked lush. Although there were not many sea creatures around, Han Fei knew that there must be life on this island. Knowing that this was the territory of the Immortal City, Han Fei had already turned into a human. The moment Han Fei landed on the island, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He felt a bad aura. This aura seemed to be full of faint, killing intent. Han Fei smiled slightly, ignored it, and walked straight to the center of the island. Less than 100 kilometers into the forest, Han Fei found that the surrounding trees turned dark green, and a large amount of poisonous fog spewed out. Han Fei pretended that he couldn't resist it and tried to quickly pass through this poisonous barrier. However, when Han Fei was just about to escape, the surrounding trees, vines, and flowers all moved. Han Fei saw hundreds of sharp thorns protruding from the black sword hemp, and countless vines full of thorns began to gather, trying to roll towards him. With a thought from Han Fei, several knife lights rolled out and stopped in front of a tree. Han Fei looked over there and walked over casually. He laughed and said, "That's enough, stop acting. Girl, come out." "Don't come over? Who the hell are you?" "Who?" Han Fei opened his mouth and inhaled. What poisonous barrier? What spiritual energy? What energy? They were all swallowed by Han Fei. This scene directly stunned the woman hiding in the tree. At this moment, in front of Han Fei, knife lights swept. After the tree was completely torn apart, Han Fei saw a thin woman quickly flash away and condense not far away, looking at him in shock. Han Fei glanced at this person and frowned slightly. This manipulator was not weak, but she was only a peak-level explorer, and she was seriously injured, which had seriously damaged her foundation. Before Han Fei spoke, the woman rushed to say, "The Immortal City and the Beast's Island have never interfered with each other." "Sir, what do you mean by coming to the Immortal City?" Han Fei was lost for words. "How do you know? I'm from the Beast's Island?" The girl shouted, "Stop pretending. No matter how much you look like a human, you can't be a human. The cage is closed, and you came from the direction of the Beast's Island. Who are you if not a beast?" Han Fei sneered. Bullsh *T. If the Demon-Beast Alliance wants to seize the Immortal City, it will be a piece of cake. Not to mention that I am not a beast. Even if I am, what do you think you can do to me? The woman gritted her teeth. If you are not a beast, you are even more suspicious. Tell me first, where are you from? Han Fei grinned. Are you going to interrogate me? Is it your turn, a peak-level explorer, to be in charge of the Immortal City? Chapter 1552. Han Fei didn't need to detain the girl. As long as he released his pressure, the girl wouldn't be able to escape. Han Fei's battle record was not a joke. Today, he had killed more than 20 venerables. Once this pressure was released, even ordinary venerables might not be able to resist it. At this moment, The woman was so scared that she was trembling all over and her face was pale. However, the woman still gritted her teeth and insisted, "If I'm an enemy, just kill me. I won't tell you any information no matter what." Han Fei grinned. "Woman, don't you know that the strong have the means to pry into the soul? Some people may turn into fools when their souls are peeped into." The woman shivered a few times, pursed her lips, and insisted not to say anything. Seeing this, Han Fei couldn't help but smile, casually withdrew his pressure, and said, "Fine. I won't argue with you. But girl, your persistence is meaningless. If I am really a bad guy, what's the difference if you tell me or not?" Seeing that the girl still didn't speak, and just looked at him vigilantly, Han Fei smiled and said, "I'm tired after running for millions of miles. Let me borrow your place." With that, Han Fei waved his hand, and a chair and a grill appeared in the clearing in the forest, with all kinds of seasonings placed aside. An advanced overlord squid was casually thrown to the ground by Han Fei. The girl was dumbfounded. Is this an advanced explorer overlord squid? Before she could think too much, hundreds of knife lights flashed past in an instant. Han Fei waved his hand and a ball of water appeared, washing the squid's internal organs like a spray gun. In just a moment, there were already pieces of squid on the huge grill. Humph, 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 clatter. Han Fei hummed a tune, smeared fish oil on the squid, and spiritual fire leaped up. The girl frowned and thought, "Is this guy going to eat here?" While smearing the fish oil, Han Fei said, "Girl, I don't know why I would lie to you. As far as I know, the human clan must be having a hard time in the Immortal City, right?" The woman didn't speak, but she didn't try to escape either. She knew that with Han Fei's strength, it was impossible for her to escape. The spiritual fire roasted the squid evenly. After a moment, Han Fei smelled a fragrant aroma. Then, when Han Fei brushed a layer of garlic juice on it, he clearly heard the woman swallowing. However, the woman remained silent. Han Fei didn't panic and seemed to be talking to himself. In the cage, there are 4 forces. They were the Black Blood City, the Demon Beast Alliance, the Forest of Terror, and the human race's Immortal City. In my opinion, no matter what, the human race should not give up on friendly relations with the beast race. Otherwise, how can you people from the Undying City survive in the cracks? As soon as Han Fei said this, he heard the woman shout, "You don't know anything. You have never been to the Immortal City. Who the hell are you?" Han Fei casually brushed a layer of chili powder on the cuttlefish, so that the fish oil could soak the chili powder and let the taste blend better. Han Fei grinned. "Who am I? Even if I told you, you wouldn't recognize it. Wu, do you recognize this?" As he spoke, he grabbed the death bone sun in his hand. "Hiss. You? Why do you have the death bone sun? Do you know Master Jade Lady?" Han Fei was stunned. "Jade Lady?" Please call me Golden Boy. Thank you. How dare you insult Master Golden Boy like this? Han Fei was dumbfounded for a while. Are they really a Golden Boy and Jade Lady? Wait, the one who gave me the death bone sun doesn't look like a Jade Lady at all. Han Fei said angrily, "What are you shouting for? If you shout again, I'll cut off your tongue and roast it." The girl shivered and quickly shut up. Han Fei turned the barbecue over and said leisurely, "Hey, I'm asking you. Since you know this death bone sun, you should know that I am not a bad guy, right? Don't tell me that the Jade Lady would give this to anyone?" The woman was also confused. After a moment of silence, she said, "No, she wouldn't. However, Senior Jade Lady is on the other side of the Immortal City. If you want to come to the Immortal City, you will go to the other side. And the way you came from is the direction of the Demon Beast Alliance. If you have really met Senior Jade Lady, there is only one way to go to the Demon Beast Alliance without passing through the Immortal City, which is the Black Blood City. So, I already know who you are." Han Fei sneered. "Damn it, I forgot that the cage was in the shape of a sun. Do I have to explain to this woman that I got this death bone sun from the outside world?" Han Fei slightly shook his head. Idiot! Munch, then. Han Fei grabbed a large piece of cuttlefish meat and wolfed it down. Han Fei swallowed mouthful by mouthful. After an hour and a half of the big cuttlefish, he finally asked, "What's your name?" The woman thought for a while. Because Han Fei's attitude was extremely arrogant, she didn't seem to want to kill him, so she said, "Wenju." Han Fei nodded slightly. "You can go now. I will go to the Immortal City later. I think your speed should be much slower than mine." Wenju asked in astonishment, "You're going to the Undying City openly and alone?" Han Fei shrugged. "Is there anything wrong with that?" Wenju was stunned for a long time. "Are you going to practice the undead?" This time, it was Han Fei who was stunned for a while. He couldn't help but ask, "Do I have to practice the undead to go to the Immortal City?" Wenju said, "Generally speaking, only those who practice the undead will go to the Immortal City. Living people don't live there." Han Fei couldn't help but scratch his head. "Where do living people live?" Seeing that Wenju didn't answer, Han Fei suddenly had a hunch that someone was coming from 50,000 kilometers away. Han Fei couldn't help but smile. "Oh, living people live on such an island full of vitality. I wonder why you are the only one on such a big island? How can you resist those sea demons as a peak-level explorer? It turns out that you are protected by a strong master." Wenju's face slightly changed, and she couldn't help but look at the void. Han Fei said, "Don't look. We haven't arrived yet." 50,000 kilometers was not very far. Han Fei continued to eat the barbecue. Suddenly, the void cracked, and a silver spear pierced through the void, shining with spear light. This sudden stab caused Wenju to be startled. She hurriedly shouted, "Long Shi don't." However, when Wenju shouted, the spear light had already pierced through. Han Fei just raised his hand, and without moving his body, a great plate turtle array appeared around his body. The ripples shook, and Long Shi was shaken away by a blow, vomiting blood wildly, but the barbecue grill in front of Han Fei was still intact, and the barbecue in his hand was still dripping oil. The newcomer was not a man, but a woman, a spear-wielding woman, full of heroic spirit. This woman wore a silver mask on half of her face, and her silver armor was intimidating. At this moment, her eyes turned pale, and she bombarded the end of the spear with a punch, as if trying to break Han Fei's array. Crack, she punched again, and the surrounding dozens of kilometers were directly crushed to the ground. Except for a gentle force that protected Wenju, all the other vegetation was turned into flying ashes. "Huh!" Han Fei turned his head and saw a finger-long crack on the great plate turtle array, and he couldn't help but be surprised. "It seems that your law enforcer power is related to armor piercing." The woman called Long Shi was shocked. "What kind of strength does this opponent have? Although I didn't use my full strength in the first blow, the second blow should not be underestimated. I used all my strength, but I couldn't even break an array?" At that time, Long Shi wanted to retreat, but Han Fei flicked his finger and a water blade burst out. Long Shi made a prompt decision, abandoned the spear, and pulled out 2 silver blades, retreating while fighting back, intending to shatter Han Fei's knife. However, Long Shi slashed more than 60 times in a row, and her silver blades were all bent, but she still couldn't shatter the water knife. Bam! Just when Long Shi was thinking about what to do, the water knife suddenly exploded. Puff! Long Shi vomited a mouthful of blood. The next second, she flashed in front of Wenju, grabbed her, stretched out her hand and waved her spear, tearing the void. It seemed that she wanted to escape. However, the two of them had only run a kilometer. However, the distance under their feet shortened, and they appeared directly in front of Han Fei. "The Tao of Space?" Long Shi exclaimed, and her eyebrows lit up as if she wanted to summon her spiritual beast. However, suddenly, under a fierce pressure, even though she had reached the peak level of a junior venerable, she subconsciously staggered and the summoning was interrupted. "Your strength is not bad, but your weapon is too poor. You can't even resist a water knife." You're only a junior peak level venerable, yet you use 2 mid-quality divine weapons? Don't you even have a refiner in this immortal city? Long Shi's anger was broken by Han Fei. She knew that even if she summoned her spiritual beast, it would be killed. At this moment, she could only grit her teeth and ask, "Who are you?" Han Fei said impatiently, "Why do you keep asking me who I am? I am the Supreme Commander of the Scattered Stars Island. Han Fei is also. Can you even recognize me if I tell you?" Long Shi and Wenju looked at each other, dumbfounded. They had never heard of this place. Long Shi immediately said, "There is no such island as the Scattered Stars Island in the entire cage." Han Fei rolled his eyes. "So, I said I am a prisoner in the cage? Why don't you two check if I have any killing intent? Why did you come up and attack me?" While cursing, Han Fei casually threw out the holy light technique. "Spirit Gatherer?" Long Shi only had time to shout, "Spirit Gatherer," and then she was wrapped in the holy light and unconsciously made indescribable sounds. The internal injuries of the two quickly recovered, and in less than 10 minutes they were healed. But Han Fei frowned slightly. "Both of you have damaged your foundation, and your strength has been greatly reduced." Han Fei looked at Long Shi. "If your foundation is not damaged, your strength in your complete state should not be weak. Why are there only the two of you on this island?" Chapter 1553. Han Fei's strength had shocked Long Shi and Wenju. Especially Long Shi, his full-strength blow was easily blocked by Han Fei. Most importantly, Han Fei was so talented as a spirit gatherer, but he was also a soul warrior? And he was also very strong. However, Long Shi immediately believed that Han Fei was a human being. Only human beings had the profession of spirit gatherer. And only human spirit gatherers would study complex arrays. Long Shi immediately cupped his hands and said, "Sir, do you mean that you come from outside the cage?" Han Fei grinned. "Would you believe me if I told you so?" Long Shi nodded. "Wenju may not know, but there are indeed human venerables coming in from the outside world occasionally. However, it's easy to come in, but extremely difficult to go out. The cage wall is not immutable. It has the ability to repair itself. Besides, the difficulty of coming in and the difficulty of going out are completely different. So far, no one has successfully left the immortal city." Han Fei thought, "I know how difficult it is." When he came in, he had also expended a tremendous amount of effort. At that time, I even used the Gemini Divine technique and a super short distance teleportation array to come in. Han Fei said, "It doesn't matter whether it's difficult or not. I need to know, how much strength does the humans in this cage still have?" "However," Long Shi said, "I won't tell you anything about the immortal city. If you can really prove that you are on the human side and came to help us, then you can go to the immortal city. If you have the guts, we can accompany you." Han Fei smiled faintly. "I didn't expect you to come here. However, I'm curious, why did you appear here and all of you are seriously injured?" Long Shi didn't hide it. "Of course I was injured, so I appeared here to recuperate. Although the Immortal City and the Demon Beast Alliance are not very friendly now, they won't be hostile. So, this is the rear of our Immortal City and the safest place." Han Fei didn't ask much but just smiled. "There are quite a lot of islands nearby. If I count correctly, there should be 24 islands, large and small, within 50,000 kilometers. There are less than 50 people living on them. Are there so few people in the Immortal City now?" Long Shi was shocked. "Is this person in front of me so terrifying? The range of perception was actually so vast?" Han Fei added, "Or, the Immortal City only has fewer living people and more undead?" Long Shi made an inviting gesture. "If you want to ask questions, please go to the Undying City first." Han Fei grinned. Haha, Han Fei just took a short break after eating the barbecue. He casually used his perception to sweep over this place. He found that although there were many islands here, there were very few living beings. In addition, Han Fei was also thinking about a question: was there only one island that emerged from the wall of death in the Shuemu heaven? Just now, Han Fei saw that there were not even a few birds on the nearby islands. They were so dead silent, therefore, Han Fei was puzzled. Was it because the Immortal City had few people? Han Fei went to the Immortal City, and Long Shi followed him with Wenju. Originally, Long Shi did not want to bring Wenju. However, she had other thoughts. If Han Fei was not an enemy, she might be able to ask him for help to cure Wenju. Because Long Shi was following him, Han Fei's speed was naturally not fast. He walked and stopped from time to time. As a result, the more he walked forward, the more islands Han Fei found. However, the size of these islands was several times smaller than before. The smallest island was only more than 10 kilometers in radius. And on these islands there were usually 3 to 5 people living. Han Fei found that all the people living on these islands were injured. Basically, they had damaged their foundation and could not continue to grow in this life. Although there were few people on the islands, there were still a lot of them. However, Han Fei was still very surprised. Although these people were not in alliance with the demonic beasts, their rear was so empty. It seemed that they still believed in the demonic beasts. Han Fei crossed hundreds of thousands of kilometers, turned in another direction, and walked for nearly 4 million kilometers. The road was full of islands. There were centralized islands, and there were also large islands that were distributed. Adding up the injured on each island, there were tens of thousands of people he had seen along the way. Counting the places he hadn't been to, there were probably hundreds of thousands of people. During the period, Han Fei also met several venerable realm powerhouses. However, like Long Shi, they were all seriously injured and their foundation was damaged. Therefore, as Han Fei walked, there were 3 venerables around him inexplicably. According to this ratio, he only walked 1 road, plus Long Shi, and encountered 4 seriously injured venerables. Then, adding up all of them, the number of seriously injured venerables was at least 20 or 30. Suddenly, Han Fei discovered that the islands where the injured lived were gone. The number of creatures in the ocean had also become fewer and fewer. Within 10,000 kilometers, the number of explorers was less than 100, and they were all ordinary sea demon creatures with very low strength. Even the number of such ordinary sea creatures was decreasing rapidly. Han Fei saw that there were skeletons everywhere on the seabed. Along the way, Han Fei was quite puzzled. He never expected that after flying 100,000 kilometers in a row, there would be skeletons everywhere, and the air of death was soaring into the sky. Before entering this sea area and after entering this sea area, even the temperature had changed. Han Fei could often see the cries of immortal souls. Han Fei's face became solemn. It wasn't until 100,000 kilometers later that Han Fei saw a vast land. The coverage of that land was completely beyond his perception range. However, Han Fei could clearly see the dead silence on that huge island. Although this big island was also protected by seals, there were no bright green plants on it. The remaining plants were basically dark green, dark purple, and black. There were scattered bones everywhere on the coast here. The color of the seals here was also black and gray. The entire island seemed to be hidden in a thin layer of black fog. Han Fei landed casually on the coast, with 4 peak-level beginner venerables and Wenju behind him. One of them said, "Long Shi, why did you bring her here? The air of death here is too heavy. Wenju is seriously injured. It's not good for her to stay here for a long time." Long Shi didn't answer but looked at Han Fei. "This is the immortal city you wanted to come to. Now we're here, please." Long Shi and the others had always been vigilant, but they weren't worried. Even if Han Fei had reached the half-king level, he wouldn't be able to fight the immortal city alone. The only thing that awaited them was death. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up. He stepped dozens of kilometers in one step and entered the island. He didn't need the nautical panorama at all. Based on the intensity of the air of death, Han Fei could guess where the immortal city was. When Han Fei entered the island, there was already a black-robed venerable waiting for him. The venerable hidden under the black robe said, "The guest invites you in. The venerables are already waiting." Han Fei grinned. "You've received the news of my arrival so quickly. It seems that you have a way to send messages." After all, having stayed on the Scattered Stars Island for a long time, Han Fei naturally knew that some special objects could communicate with each other. That was the function of the Star Waste Tag. The black-robed man didn't answer but led the crowd to walk on this gloomy and silent island. Not long after, Han Fei saw a plain of bone jars, and those bone jars were ghastly black. Han Fei was puzzled. These should be people who had just died, right? He could even look into some bone jars and find that some people's bodies were intact. The old turtle said, "These are indeed people who have just died. However, it wasn't like they were hopeless before they died. It's just that I severed my own life force and chose to cultivate as an undying being." Han Fei frowned. "So many bone jars. Are they all cultivators of the undead?" The old turtle said, "No, only some of the bone jars shrouded in black air are cultivators of the undead. The advantage of living people is that they can retain their memories and not die. But the disadvantage is even more outrageous, that is, once they are killed again, their existence will be completely obliterated, their souls can't be reincarnated, and they will be completely destroyed. This is the price of cultivating the undead." Hearing the old turtle's explanation, Han Fei naturally felt depressed. If it wasn't necessary, who would be willing to cultivate the undead? Within a radius of 100,000 kilometers of the immortal city, the sea and the islands were covered with bones. God knew how many people had died since the wall of death came into being. After half an hour, the crowd crossed the gloomy wasteland of bones, and a huge city built of black mountain stones appeared in Han Fei's eyes. At that moment, more than 30 senses scanned Han Fei at once. According to the pressure brought by these senses on him, Han Fei found that there should be a demi-king among them. If Han Fei hadn't been to the Demon-Beast Alliance, he might have been shocked to see more than 30 demi-kings, more than 100 demi-kings, and more than 1,000 explorers. But now, Han Fei had more than 1,000 puppets with him. And in terms of the number of venerables, these more than 30 couldn't even hold a party on the Beast Island. More than 10 kilometers away from the giant city, Han Fei stopped and sighed gloomily. Has the human race in the cage already withered to this extent? On the city wall, someone said in a hoarse voice, "Then it should be better than the outside world, right?" Han Fei said with a smile, "There is no opponent like the Black Blood City in the outside world." Han Fei was talking to a black-robed figure on the city wall, not caring about others. Behind Han Fei, Long Shi and the others looked at Han Fei with complicated eyes. For an outsider to barge into the undead city alone, this required more than just a little bit of courage. The black-robed man didn't answer Han Fei but looked at Han Fei and said, "Who are you? Why are you here?" Han Fei casually took out his 13-star token and said loudly, "I'm the current Supreme Commander of the Scattered Stars Island, Han Fei. I'm here to become stronger. However, seeing the Immortal City, I've decided to help you solve the problem of the Black Blood City temporarily." A black-robed man sneered. How arrogant! More than 1 or 2 Supreme Commanders of the Scattered Stars Island have come, and there is only one who is still alive and able to fight. Why are you here? Long Shi and the others were all stunned. Is there really a place called the Scattered Stars Island? Han Fei really came from the outside world? Han Fei said disdainfully, "My name is Han Fei. I liberated the Scattered Stars Island, slaughtered all the sea demons, killed more than 20 enemies, and killed more than a demi-king. Is this achievement enough?" Chapter 1554. Hissed. As soon as Han Fei said that, the beginner venerables behind him all gasped. More than 20 enemies? And he had slaughtered a half-king? This person. What kind of terrifying existence was he? Long Shi and Wenju were a little stunned. Was this person so strong? No wonder this person was so fearless and domineering all the way here. At the same time, they began to fantasize about the outside world. What supreme commander? That must be a very high position, right? Did such a person really come to the cage to help mankind? However, one of the undying creatures on the undying city sneered. You're just a mid-level venerable. How can you say you've slaughtered a half-king? As soon as this remark came out, Long Shi and the others were dumbfounded. F***ck. It turns out that he's just a mid-level venerable? Although he's a little stronger than me, slaughtering a half-king? That's bullsh**t. Don't you know how to brag? Another undead said, Han Fei, since you're here, the immortal city will certainly welcome you. However, your strength alone is too weak. An undead sighed faintly. Living people don't enter the immortal city. The air of death here is too heavy. You can go to the front line and have a look. A mid-level venerable can't change the situation at all. Haha, it seems that the human race in this cage has indeed declined. It doesn't matter if you don't believe me. But today, I'm here to tell you that I'm here. I will reunite the forces of the human race. I'll do what you can't do. I'll do what you dare not. In short, I'll do what you can do, and I'll do what you can't do. What an arrogant kid. Your realm is not high, but you're quite arrogant. Let me test your strength. A black shadow broke through the air, black mist rose, and a ghostly shadow flashed across the sky. In the thick mist, a big white bone hand grabbed at Han Fei. Han Fei stomped on the ground and the ground sunk. The sacrificing punch, accompanied by a strange red light, roared out. In terms of pure strength, Han Fei had reached the level of a peak-level advanced venerable, and this was without using his own Tao. In the blink of an eye, the huge skeletal hand melted. The ghostly silhouette formed by the person who attacked was immediately blasted into nothingness. That person was shocked. Han Fei was only an intermediate venerable. How could he have such great power? With a single thrust, 7 white bone spears shot out from his body. However, only a series of banging sounds could be heard, and all the white bone spears shattered in response. However, the sacrificial punch was still powerful and invincible. In the end, just as the sacrificing punch was about to hit the undying, a big black hand grabbed the sacrificing punch with one hand and let the terrifying power explode in midair, creating a layer of red ripples. Even so, the giant black hand did not tremble at all. At this moment, most people were dumbfounded. When Zhu even secretly transmitted her voice, Long Shi, what realm is this? Long Shi was stunned. How should he answer this? It didn't seem to be at the level of a medium-level venerable, right? After the punch, an undying on the city wall said in a hoarse voice, You are indeed very strong. If you go all out, you should be able to rival a peak-level venerable. However, there is still a gap between you and a half-king. You know what kind of gap I'm talking about. Even many people on the immortal city were dumbfounded. They all turned to look at the undying, wondering if this middle-level human was comparable to a peak-level venerable when he went all out. If that was the case, then this person had to be treated with caution. A middle-level venerable might not be able to change much of the situation. However, a peak-level venerable was a completely different kind of deterrent. There was a difference in the maturity of the Great Path between a peak-level venerable and a half-king. However, they were still a great deterrent to ordinary beginner-level, middle-level, and advanced venerables. Han Fei grinned. I think you must have forgotten that the reason why the human race can stand in this world is not only because of strength, but also because of wisdom, unity, and faith. Now, can we have a good talk? In fact, the immortal city was too short of people. Living people were also worth cherishing. This was also why a peak explorer like Wen Zhu was arranged to recuperate in the rear after being seriously injured. Honestly, the people didn't even dare to easily waste such a combat power. Even if they knew that Wen Zhu's foundation was greatly damaged and that she had no hope of making another breakthrough, it was still worth preserving her combat strength. Therefore, the appearance of a super powerhouse like Han Fei, who could rival a peak stage venerable, was definitely a pleasant surprise for many people. Now, they couldn't wait for Han Fei to go to the front line immediately and show the sea demons that the human race still had high-end combat power. Therefore, no matter how unreasonable and domineering Han Fei was at this moment, these people wouldn't attack him. Most of these venerables didn't know the Scattered Stars Island, let alone where it was. Although most of the experts that came from the outside world had already perished. However, the identity of the Supreme Commander of the Scattered Stars Island was still quite intimidating. Killing more than 20 supremacies and leading 1 million humans, a figure of this level was definitely no ordinary figure. As the saying went, it's easy to buy 1,000 troops, but it's hard to find a good general. They knew Han Fei's importance. Immediately, the black-robed half-king on the Immortal City said, "You can come, but you'd better put up an amulet. Otherwise, it won't be a good thing if the death energy enters your body. Long Shi, retreat to the outside of the island for now." "Yes, Master Netherworld." The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. He raised his foot and stood on the city tower in one step. Outside his body, he didn't put up an amulet. As early as when Han Fei came to this island, he had already sensed the death energy. However, it was clearly recorded in the great desolate body art that everything in the world, in a sense, could be exchanged with each other. The death energy was also a kind of energy, and it was a particularly advanced energy. Its particularity was that it was a kind of power of the law of death, even more advanced than spiritual energy and demonic energy. Han Fei slightly inhaled the death energy and activated the great desolate body art in his body. The acupoints on his chest were like millstones, grinding the death energy and expelling some of the dark air from his body. Seeing that Han Fei swallowed the death energy and was able to expel part of the impurities in the next moment, the Undyings were all shocked. Someone asked in surprise, "Why can you absorb the death energy?" Han Fei said with a smile, "Everything in the world is energy. The strong dare to absorb all the energy in the world." Han Fei said mysteriously, and the old turtle couldn't help but roll his eyes. However, such mysterious words, in the ears of others, made Han Fei seem very mysterious and pretentious. Han Fei didn't feel nervous because he was among the Undyings. Instead, he looked directly at the half-king who had just talked to him. Netherworld came to Han Fei, paused, raised his hand, and lifted the black robe over his head. In the next moment, Han Fei saw a pale face. However, different from the skeletons in Han Fei's mind, this person's face was paler and thinner, and there was no vitality in his body. Apart from the thick death energy and the pale face, this person was almost no different from a real person. Of course, because Han Fei had already seen the Thug Patriarch, he knew that these people might look fine, but when they fought, it would be a big problem. Netherworld said, "The Immortal City is indeed short of strong people. However, you should know that even if you have the battle power of a peak stage venerable, or even a half-king, you can't change the situation of the entire Immortal City by yourself." Han Fei looked at Netherworld and said lightly, "Why don't we ally with the Demon Beast Alliance? There are many strong people in the Demon Beast Alliance. If we ally, we can at least deter Black Blood City." Netherworld looked at the people around him and didn't answer Han Fei's question. Instead, he replied, "Do you know how to convert to the undead?" Han Fei frowned slightly and then shook his head slightly. Netherworld said, "Since you don't know, then don't ask us why we don't ally with the Demon Beast Alliance. There must be a reason for this." Han Fei was still waiting for Netherworld's response, but someone next to him said, "To be precise, those who convert to the undead can no longer be regarded as human beings. Some things, it's not that we don't want to say, but we can't. Some things, once touched, will be annihilated." Han Fei even frowned when he heard that. At this time, the old turtle also reminded him, "Han Fei, don't pursue this issue anymore. Such a secret is indeed not something you can pursue now. Don't ask and don't mention it. Han Fei was puzzled. Old Yuan, do you know? The old turtle said, I told you not to ask. Remember what I told you. Some names, no matter how far away you are, can't be mentioned. Otherwise, you will get into trouble. Han Fei had never thought about what was behind the undead. However, from today on, Han Fei knew that this was probably a taboo that he couldn't touch for the time being. A taboo that even the old turtle and the emperor were extremely afraid of. Han Fei nodded slightly. Okay. I won't ask about this. Everyone, my time in the wall of death. The cage is limited. What I've said is also true to my word. Some things indeed don't depend on strength. I need the command of a part of the immortal city. Han Fei was straightforward. Long before he came to the immortal city, he had heard that the human beings here lived a miserable life. Therefore, from the very beginning, he had the idea of commanding the immortal city. Although Han Fei knew that there must be half-kings or even pseudo-kings in the immortal city. However, if he asked for a sky-high price, he would pay for it. He would take as much power as he could get. Therefore, Han Fei heard Netherworld say, That's impossible. An undead sneered. You have just come to the immortal city, not even half an hour. You want us to give you the immortal city? Do you think it's possible? Han Fei grinned and looked back at Long Shi and the others outside the island. Then I want them. Chapter 1555. Them? To the surprise of Netherworld and the others, Han Fei's purpose was to divide power. They wouldn't give it to him anyway. After all, Han Fei's sudden appearance caught them off guard. A complete stranger, even if they confirmed that he was a human, they still wanted him? Power? Netherworld and the others were not fools. Of course, they wouldn't agree. Before Netherworld spoke, someone had already said, That's impossible. You should have found that their foundation has been damaged and their strength has been greatly weakened. They can't even use 70% of their strength. It's even more impossible for you to use them. They are the seeds of my human race. Han Fei immediately interrupted, Don't be so quick to deny it. I said I want them. I want them to recover their strength to the peak. The Undying were all confused. Someone said in a low voice, Are you a spirit gatherer? But even if you are an excellent spirit gatherer, you should know that the damage to the foundation can't be healed by ordinary healing technique. Even if you are a spirit gatherer, the immortal city is not short of spirit gatherers. Han Fei grinned. I just want to ask, if their strength is restored to the peak, will you give them to me? To be frank, I once commanded thousands of people and have my own style of doing things. However, a commander can't be without soldiers. Han Fei could feel that these people were all staring at him. However, the conditions Han Fei offered were indeed too tempting. If Han Fei really had the ability to cure them all, it meant that the combat power of the immortal city could at least be increased by a part. Of course, since Han Fei had mentioned this problem, Netherworld believed that Han Fei would definitely cure some people. Maybe dozens, maybe hundreds, but no matter how many. As long as Han Fei's actions were within the scope of surveillance, why not? Deep blue flames burst out of Netherworld's robe, and a hoarse voice came out leisurely. Okay, but even if you cure them, don't abuse them. There are not so many humans in the cage, and they can't be sacrificed. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. Of course, I will make good use of my people. Everyone, please call all the wounded on the battlefield in the rear. Puff! In an instant, strange blue and green flames erupted on the immortal city. These immortals thought Han Fei was crazy. Do you know how many people there are? The Netherworld immediately said, Han Fei, do you know what you are talking about? Call all of them over? Even if you're a true king, can you heal hundreds of thousands of people at once? Han Fei grinned. Who says I'm going to heal hundreds of thousands of people at once? If my guess is correct, there should be many islands at the front lines of the undead city, right? Give me an island on the front line. No. Do you really think you've come to rule the undead city? Han Fei, don't push your luck. As soon as Han Fei said that, two people roared. However, Han Fei's body was full of killing intent, and his voice echoed, "Why not? Of the four great powers in the cage, you are the weakest. Is it the humans who are incompetent, or is it you who are incompetent? If you can't do it, then let me do it. Why can't I?" Han Fei looked ferocious. He would use different methods to deal with different races. Having stayed in the 100,000 Mountains, Han Fei knew what demonic beasts were like. However, Han Fei was more familiar with human beings because human beings were too smart. There were too many things to consider in his mind in an instant. However, the more he wanted to be comprehensive, the more his hands and feet were tied. When he came here, Han Fei didn't intend to spend too much time worrying about the problem of taking people. If he had to become one of them and blend in with them before he could ask to lead a group of people, that would be a trap. How could he have so much time to play with them? Therefore, Han Fei was very, very strong at this moment. Han Fei shouted in a low voice, "Give me an island. If I heal one of them, they will belong to me. I came to the cage to seek opportunities and grow up quickly. It's inevitable that I will kill a venerable. I don't have so much time to waste on blending in with you." Someone scolded, "Arrogant. As if the undead city is a place where you can come and go as you please. Do you think you're invincible just because you have the combat power of a peak-level venerable?" Someone sneered. "You've only shown the combat power of a peak-level advanced venerable. Even if you really reach the peak-level venerable, do you think you can shake a city by yourself?" Han Fei licked the corner of his mouth and said, "What? The undead city is already like this. Are you afraid that I will divide the power? Do you think I care about the power of the undead city? What I want is the entire human world. I am the king of the human world." When Han Fei said the last few words, his voice was like thunder in the clear sky, echoing in the sky. Long Shi and the others retreated and waited outside the undead city. Han Fei had just set foot in the undead city, but they couldn't. Even though they had already become venerables, their foundation was already damaged. If they stayed with the undead, once they were contaminated by the death aura, it would be difficult for them to get rid of it. Someone said, "Long Shi, what's the background of Han Fei and the Scattered Stars Island? They're really arrogant." Another person also said, "Yes, Long Shi. This man is arrogant and domineering. How dare he challenge the Nether Grand Venerable outside the undead city? And he even attacked? Is he fierce or stupid?" Long Shi had been frowning. "Do you think a fool dares to break into the undead city alone?" The other two junior venerables shook their heads. The undead city was a place that no one dared to come. There was not even a fish in the hundreds of thousands of kilometers around the undead city, who, all of a sudden, the four of them saw a quarrel on the undead city. When Zhu asked in surprise, "Long Shi, is that man going to fight the Nether Grand Venerable?" All of a sudden, the sky, which had been shrouded in darkness all year round, was illuminated by a holy white beam of light, leaving 4 big holes. The 4 beams of light fell in an instant and enveloped Long Shi and the other 3. Ah! At that moment, Long Shi, Wenju, and the other 2 junior venerables all unconsciously stretched their bodies and moaned in comfort. At that moment, they felt that their foundation was recovering. And it was recovering at an incredible speed. They had only recovered 1 or 2% of their foundation after recuperating for a few years. However, under this beam of light, they recovered in the blink of an eye. At that moment, apart from feeling comfortable, Long Shi and the other 3 could only hear a few words echoing in the sky. "I am the king of the human world." What a domineering sentence! Coming from Han Fei, not to mention Long Shi and the others, even the Nether Grand Venerable was shocked. Just now, when Han Fei said those words, this man burst out with an astonishing aura, which frightened the Nether Grand Venerable. As the heavenly awakening divine technique descended, the Nether Grand Venerable and the others immediately stepped away from Han Fei. At that moment, Han Fei's body emitted a holy light, which made them feel a burning pain unconsciously. However, in the next moment, no one cared about Han Fei's rudeness anymore, because they saw the beams of light and the aura of Long Shi and the other three getting stronger and stronger. After only a minute, Wen Zhu exclaimed, "Long Shi, my foundation, the damage to my foundation, has it recovered?" Long Shi and the other two junior venerables were also so surprised that their eyes almost popped out. Looking at the city tower of the undead city, Long Shi swallowed and said, My foundation has also recovered." The other two looked up at the gradually disappearing light and murmured, "Who is he?" On the undead city, someone murmured, "Heavenly Awakening. The legendary Heavenly Awakening divine technique?" Green flames were burning in the Nether Grand Venerable's eyes. Han Fei knew that he was looking at him. After a while, the Nether Grand Venerable said, "Okay. I promise you." The Nether Grand Venerable shouted, "Long Shi, Hua Meng, Qin Yu. From today on, you are under Han Fei's command. Immediately summon all the wounded in the rear and rush to the Death Island closest to the undead city." Long Shi and the others were stunned for a moment. Looking at the man on the undead city with complicated expressions, he took a deep breath and cupped his fist. "Yes, sir." Long Shi looked at Wen Zhu. "You stay here. We'll go summon more people." Wen Zhu was dumbfounded. God knows what happened. She somehow intercepted a suspicious person from the Demon Beast Alliance. Then, she found that she couldn't beat him, so she asked Long Shi for help. However, Long Shi couldn't beat him either. In the end, this man broke into the undead city. Now, he even became her leader? On the undead city, Han Fei slightly cupped his hands. "Thank you, everyone. I, Han Fei, may not stay in the undead city forever. However, within 100 years, I will try my best to take you out of the cage. The day you get out of the cage will be the day that Black Blood City is destroyed." This time, no one refuted what Han Fei said, because they couldn't refute it. 100 years later, who knew? If that was really the case, it wouldn't be bad. At this moment, the Nether Grand Venerable said in a hoarse voice, "The Apocalypse Divine Technique is indeed a human king technique, which has never appeared in history. However, the Black Blood City is not so easy to fight. 100 years is too short." Han Fei grinned. "Let's wait and see." Then, Han Fei took a deep look at the undead city. This was basically an ancient castle filled with darkness and the stench of decay. The death aura inside was too strong. Believing the old turtle, Han Fei didn't want to explore the secrets of the undead. Han Fei took a step and appeared next to Wen Zhu. Then, Han Fei looked back and said, "If you are worried, you can come to my island in the future. My people won't die easily." After he finished speaking, Han Fei shot his gaze at Wen Zhu and smiled lightly. "All right, now, take me to Death Island to wait." Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1556. The Death Island was about 300,000 kilometers away from the island where the Immortal City was. When Han Fei arrived, he found that thousands of human corpses were placed in a certain area. Wen Zhu secretly glanced at Han Fei and explained, "These should be the people who died this year. Because their bodies were intact, they were brought back. They had to wait for a while before they were brought to the Immortal City to be eroded by the death energy. Then, they were brought to the Death Valley." Death Valley? Han Fei had certainly heard of this name. He had seen it with his own eyes. It was the place where the Death Bone Sun came from, which was guarded by the Jade Girl. Han Fei rolled his eyes. "Now, do you believe that I'm a human being?" Wen Zhu's face immediately turned red. She said in a low voice, "Previously it was indeed unbelievable." Han Fei said with a smile, "Tell me about the Golden Boy and the Jade Girl and the island they were on. If I'm right, that island disappeared for a while more than 5 years ago, right?" Wen Zhu looked at Han Fei in surprise. You know that too? Han Fei casually grabbed the death bone Sun and played with it, saying leisurely, "Otherwise, where do you think I got this thing?" Wen Zhu had a complicated look on her face. That makes sense. Han Fei got the death bone Sun in the outside world, so he didn't have to go to the Black Blood City and the Demon Beast Alliance. Wen Zhu said, "I don't know about the Golden Boy and the Jade Girl, but that island is called the Forbidden Island, which is an absolute forbidden area for humans. Except for the undead, ordinary people can't get close to it." The Forbidden Island? Han Fei couldn't help but be interested. There were many people who went to the island with him. Han Fei asked, "What kind of forbidden method?" He heard when Zhu said, "It is said that on that island there is often a bloody aura soaring to the sky, there is a great evil creature. There are also weird demon plants that hunt indiscriminately. There is also a grassland on that island that will disappear when you walk on it. Also, as you know, there is the legendary Death Valley on that island, which is a place to transform undead creatures. On that island." Wen Zhu said a lot of things in a loud voice. In the end, Wen Zhu said, "Most of us have never been to that island. You? Venerable Han Fei, haven't you been there before?" Han Fei turned his head and glanced at Wen Zhu. "You can call me Han Fei or Marshal Han." Han Fei thought for a while and didn't pursue the matter. He found an empty space and sat on a rock. He took out a big pot and picked up an advanced explorer-level crystal dragon pill, which was a big lobster, breaking the shell and taking out the meat. This series of actions could be said to be as smooth as flowing water. Gulp. Wen Zhu swallowed. Instead of looking at the lobster meat, she looked at the lobster shell of the shattered crystal dragon ball and said pitifully, "Master Han Fei. General Han, the lobster shell is broken just like that? Isn't that too much of a pity?" Han Fei froze for a moment and then remembered that long she was using intermediate divine weapons. It seemed like that thing was only at the level of this lobster's shell. Han Fei looked at Wen Zhu and asked, "Are you short of weapons?" Wen Zhu nodded. "Actually, we don't lack weapons. We just lack high-grade weapons. For example, Long Shi originally had a high-level divine weapon. Later, after she was seriously injured, she removed the ownership of the weapon and gave it to someone else." Han Fei was lost for words. "So, you're short of weapons?" Han Fei shook his head slightly, but he glanced at the lobster shell and curled his lips. "Who?" While cooking the hot pot, Han Fei raised his left hand and grabbed the lobster shell. With a clatter, the spiritual fire was boiling. After about 10 minutes, Han Fei casually threw out a few materials and then saw that the hot pot was still burning. Han Fei emptied his right hand, picked up a sledgehammer, and in an instant, he appeared 10,000 meters high in the sky. Clang, clang, clang. Clang, clang, clang. Wen Zhu only saw figures flashing in the sky and the sledgehammer striking horizontally. The void shook, and the ripples were like knives, splitting the sky and the earth, but none of them fell on the hot pot. About 10 minutes later, Han Fei swished and appeared in front of the hot pot. He casually threw a snake-shaped long whip to her. "Manipulator, it's better to use a whip." Wen Zhu subconsciously took the long whip and felt a mountain-like gravity. The light and toughness of the whip were better than all the weapons she had ever touched. Wen Zhu looked at Han Fei in shock. "Is this a high-quality divine weapon?" Han Fei curled his lips. To be honest, ultra-quality divine weapons are indeed rare and require a lot of materials. The corpse of a venerable realm demon can only be refined into 1 to 5 ultra-quality divine weapons according to its realm. Let's wait for a while and find an opportunity to hunt a few of them first. Only then can I make some better weapons. Gulp. Wen Zhu swallowed. The venerable hunter is back? Just to make weapons? Are all the humans in the outside world so ferocious? She couldn't help but remember that Han Fei said he had killed more than 20 enemies, and even killed half a king. Wen Zhu thought to herself, in the eyes of people like Han Fei, venerables are just weapons. Cuckoo. After a while, The hot pot was opened. Han Fei picked up a large piece of lobster meat and began to eat. It was not until he finished the 2 or 3 kilograms of meat in his hand that he remembered that there was someone next to him. He immediately said to Wenju, "Sit down and eat 2 pieces too. It's millions of kilometers away. Even if they come at full speed, it will take at least half a day." As early as when Han Fei was barbecuing, Wenju had already wanted to eat it. At this moment, Han Fei had confirmed that she was a human being and had become his leader. It should be okay to eat a few bites. When Wenju picked up a piece of lobster meat and stuffed it into her mouth, she was so stunned that even her teeth stiffened. She looked at Han Fei in shock. What kind of divine taste is this? Han Fei didn't pay attention to Wenju but looked at a corner of the void and said lightly, "Guys, don't you want to have a bite?" Wenju quickly raised her head and looked around, but found nothing at all. However, in the void a voice came out, "The undying have no sense of taste. This is also one of the prices." Han Fei shrugged slightly. "It's a pity. By the way, can you send someone to the 10,000 Beast Island to send a message for me?" An undying appeared beside Han Fei and said lightly, "Are you from the 10,000 Beast Island?" Han Fei smiled and said, "The problem is not where I come from. Send someone to the 10,000 Beast Island and tell Yangshinji to put some pressure on them in the life and death gorge in the next few years." The black-robed undying asked, "Can you influence the decision of the Demon Beast Alliance?" Han Fei raised his head and smiled at him. "In this cage, the demon beasts are the natural allies of the human race. Since I'm here, I won't come in vain. As a general, no matter how strong he is, he won't fight alone in the face of a battle with a great disparity in strength." The black-robed undying pondered for a moment. "Okay. However," Han Fei suddenly said, "forget it. I'll use my own people later." The black-robed undying. Han Fei overestimated the speed of Long Shi and the others. Maybe the range of millions of kilometers was indeed relatively large, therefore, it took a full day for a large number of people to fly over. Swish, swish, swish in the sky, a large number of strong masters descended like dumplings falling into a pot. These people were all explorers. Not a single one of them was below the explorer level. Han Fei also found that there were no children here. Then, logically speaking, the people below the explorer realm and children should be on the other side of the immortal city, heading for the battlefield. Han Fei was eating breakfast. He made himself a pot of crab roe soup. At this time, Hua Meng landed with a bang. The burly bald man said respectfully, "Master Han Fei, everyone is in place. Because a lot of manpower has been used, it's a bit slow." Behind Hua Meng, in the open land, groups of people landed. These people all looked at Han Fei, who was sitting at the front and drinking soup. Slurp, Han Fei didn't even raise his head and said lightly, "Wait for everyone to arrive." Another 2 hours passed. The figures in the sky didn't stop. Then, Chen Yu and Long Shi landed one after another. When the 3 of them were all here, Han Fei knew that they were all here. At this moment, he had drunk half a pot of soup. Han Fei raised his head and glanced around. There were 18 junior venerables, 5 intermediate venerables, and 1 advanced venerable. Han Fei glanced at the advanced venerable and thought to himself, since the advanced venerable was sent to the rear, he must be seriously injured. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. Fortunately, he could use the great path of heavenly enlightenment now. Besides, his strength had grown to the intermediate venerable realm. Otherwise, how could he cure these people? It was impossible. Even now, with his vitality, it was impossible to cure all of these people. However, it was possible to spend some time hunting some sea demons and devour some vitality. After all, his void lines had been upgraded, and he could transform more vitality. While Han Fei was looking at these people were all looking at Han Fei. In their view, since Han Fei could cure Long Shi, Hua Meng, and Chen Yu, then the others must be easy to cure. Han Fei waved his hand and the soup pot in front of him was put away. Han Fei didn't get up and said leisurely, "I think you should already know. From today on, you're all my men. From now on, you can call me General Han. It doesn't matter if you don't know me. It doesn't matter if you think I'm an outsider. It doesn't matter if you don't trust me. But—" Han Fei's face changed and his body was full of murderous intent. His voice was cold. "But you have to obey my orders unconditionally. Although I won't let you die, what I want to say is, even if I tell you to die, no one is allowed to object. Do you hear me?" Han Fei suddenly stood up. His eyes narrowed, and like a giant, he slowly stood up. Chapter 1557. Different from staying in the Demon-Beast Alliance, Han Fei was very domineering in the territory of the human race. Han Fei firmly believed that he was going to become a king, the king of the human race, so he had to show the momentum that a king should have. If a commander wanted to directly and effectively control the overall situation, he had to have momentum. He had to suppress everyone with his momentum alone. Of course, when there was oppression, there would be resistance, especially for a character like Han Fei who appeared out of nowhere. No one knew who he was, and no one even knew where he came from. So, as soon as Han Fei finished speaking, a venerable said, "If you want us to be your people, first, you need to cure us, and second, you have to tell us your background, right?" Han Fei glanced at the venerable and sneered. "An advanced venerable? You must be Lu Yuntian, right? Why, if I don't tell you my background, you won't follow me, will you?" When Han Fei was waiting for them on the Death Island, when Zhu had basically told him everything he needed to know, Lu Yuntian was the only advanced venerable at the rear. Because he was so seriously injured that his realm was almost lowered, he was ordered to retreat to the rear. Lu Yuntian narrowed his eyes and looked at Han Fei. He knew that Han Fei was very extraordinary. When Long Shi explained the situation to him, he knew that Han Fei must be very powerful. How could an intermediate venerable who could fight with peak-level combat power be an ordinary person? Han Fei grinned and said straightforwardly, "Of course I can tell you where I come from, but not now, fuse." Han Fei's pupils turned black and white. As soon as the yin-yang divine eyes appeared, Han Fei's expression became extremely indifferent, as if he didn't want strangers to approach him. Han Fei glanced at the crowd. There were a total of 326,204 people, which was much less than the 500,000 people he expected. However, these people were at least explorers. In this way they were extraordinarily strong. More than 300,000 explorers. How terrifying was this combat power? However, Han Fei would not be scared by this number, because he knew that these people had accumulated over time, and those who couldn't make a breakthrough at all. Some people stopped at the junior explorer level, and some stopped at the intermediate explorer level. There wasn't even a 1,000th chance of becoming a venerable. Even if Yangming cured these people, only a few of them would be able to become venerable ones. However, even in such a group, there were still people lurking. Back in the level 3 fishery, Han Fei had learned that it was possible for a sea demon to disguise as a human being and cultivate according to the methods of human beings. Especially those sea monsters with level 7 spiritual meridians and above, they were qualified to come into contact with the top-level demon transformation technique. What was even more terrifying than the human transformation technique was the combination of sea monsters and humans. This kind of thing could not be stopped even after being banned. The Scattered Stars Island used to be infiltrated by sea demons and couldn't be detected easily. Originally, Han Fei thought that there wouldn't be any sea demons pretending to be human beings, because there were half-king realm experts in the Immortal City after all. However, after a quick glance, Han Fei found a few guys who were not right. Swish, Han Fei disappeared without a trace. In the next second, when he reappeared, there were 4 more people around him. The 4 of them were dumbfounded. They didn't know when they were captured. In short, their brains suddenly went haywire, and then they appeared in the open space in front of the crowd. Han Fei's pressure descended, and the four of them all knelt on the ground. Immediately someone shouted, "Bao Shan! Master Han Fei, why did you attack them?" Someone frowned. "Master, what do you mean?" All of a sudden, the people below the stage were in an uproar. Someone shouted, "Master Han Fei, you captured them without hesitation. If you don't have a reason today, we won't be convinced." One of them, who was controlled by Han Fei, shouted, "You're bullying the weak. Although you're a human grandmaster, you can't do anything to us. Although you are a human grandmaster, we won't be convinced." Another person echoed, "Yes, my compatriots, this person has never appeared in the Immortal City before. We have never seen him on the battlefield. It can be said that there is no such person in the Immortal City at all. Look at this person's attitude. Don't follow him." The other two also shouted angrily, "We won't accept it." Han Fei grinned. "You won't accept it?" Puff! Han Fei held a knife in his hand and slowly cut into a person's body inch by inch. Amidst the cries of alarm, that person's body actually began to change. His limbs were changing, and so was his lower body. Soon, he turned into a mermaid. Hiss! In an instant the scene fell silent. Hum! In the void a black-robed man appeared. This person reached out, pressed his hand on the person's body, and searched him up and down. The black-robed undying said in a hoarse voice, "Sea demon." At this moment, the bodies of the other three people trembled at the same time. Their souls seemed to be controlled and began to transform uncontrollably. Soon, they turned into three mermaids. At this moment, Han Fei loosened the void lines and let the three people go. Then he said with a smile, "Now, do you still accept it?" The three of them were horrified. "Who is this person? I hid myself perfectly. How could I be discovered so easily?" However, at the moment when Han Fei withdrew the void lines, the first thing the three people did was to self-destruct. The black-robed undying obviously wanted to take action, but seeing Han Fei's calm face, he knew he had a plan to deal with it. So he didn't move, wanting to see how Han Fei would do it. However, Han Fei didn't stop the three people from self-destructing at all. These three people were all half-venerables. Everyone could see that they were going to self-destruct. Seeing that Han Fei didn't stop them, they couldn't help but panic. Some people had even taken out their armor boxes, and many people had already taken protective measures. Bam! 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 However, when the three people self-destructed, spiritual light burst out from the ground within 100 meters. When many people exclaimed and even began to dodge, a large blue light array instantly enveloped the three people. The terrifying power of the explosion didn't shake the outside world at all. In front of hundreds of thousands of people, no one saw when Han Fei set up the array. Seeing this method of setting up the array, many spirit gatherers present gasped. Lu Yuntian and the other venerables also frowned. Only Long Shi, Hua Meng, and Chen Yu were indifferent, thinking, "You haven't seen his crazier side yet." Standing in front of the Immortal City, he dared to attack. "This person is crazy." Han Fei smiled and said, "Look, everything I tell you may be quickly leaked by these spies after I go to the battlefield. However, I still won't hide it from you. My name is Han Fei, and I come from outside the cage. You can call me General Han. In a year, I will take you to kill 10 sea demon venerables. If you can't do it, I will resign and treat you as free treatment. You won't suffer any losses. What do you think?" Wow! The crowd was in an uproar. Kill 10 sea demons in a year? Isn't this a joke? The Immortal City was weaker than Black Blood City. It had always been passive defense. If it weren't for the Demon Beast Alliance, with the strength of Black Blood City, it would have destroyed the Immortal City. Killing 10 sea demons hadn't happened in nearly 10,000 years. Even if the 10 sea demon venerables were killed, how many venerables would the human side lose? Lu Yuntian frowned. "Do you know what you are talking about?" Han Fei's eyes narrowed and his voice was cold. I don't need you to question me. This is the first time. If there is a second time, I don't care who you are. Get out of here. Lu Yuntian's face turned red. In any case, he was an advanced venerable. Even if he was seriously injured, he was still an advanced venerable. At this moment, he was being scolded by a middle-level venerable and couldn't refute. At this moment, Lu Yuntian really wanted to slap Han Fei to death. However, when Lu Yuntian was extremely annoyed, he suddenly heard a voice in his mind, "From now on, you have to have a conflict with me. On the surface, you have to obey me, but behind my back, you have to resent me." Suddenly, Lu Yuntian stared at Han Fei and thought, "What does this mean?" Han Fei secretly said to him, "There's a little anger in your eyes. There's a traitor among the venerables. Do you want them to see it?" Lu Yuntian's heart tightened. There's a traitor among the venerables? How could it be? There were only so many human venerables in total. There were traitors among the venerables hiding in the rear camp? This horrified him. So, was Han Fei just putting on a show with him? Before Lu Yuntian could think more, Han Fei said, "Except for Long Shi, Hua Meng, and Chen Yu, all the venerables, come to 100 meters in front of me. Since I'm going to command you, I'll heal your injuries first. And I need to let you know whether I'm qualified to command you or not." Many people were looking at Lu Yuntian. After all, Han Fei was too strong and domineering, and Lu Yuntian was the strongest among them. Besides, he had a little conflict with Han Fei just now. "Humph," Lu Yuntian shouted. "Okay, I'd like to see how you can cure more than 300,000 of us by yourself." After that, Lu Yuntian took a step and came to 100 meters in front of Han Fei. The others watched quietly and followed Lu Yuntian, wanting to see Han Fei's ability. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. There were a total of 18 beginner venerables, 5 intermediate venerables, and 1 advanced venerable. Among them, excluding Long Shi and the other 2, there were a total of 21 venerables that needed to be treated. This was not a simple injection of vitality. Long Shi, Wenju, and Wenju's foundation was damaged, and Han Fei had lost nearly 80 years of vitality. The remaining venerables, including a high-rank venerable like Lu Yuntian, would require 700 to 800 years of life, even if they were treated with the heavenly enlightenment Great Tao. However, Han Fei dared to bet that as long as he killed enough enemies, his vitality could be absorbed back. Han Fei had no doubt about his ability to kill enemies. Therefore, Han Fei raised his arms and said, "Tianqi first update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter." Chapter 1558. When Han Fei raised his arms, the black-robed immortal next to Han Fei had disappeared. The heavenly awakening divine technique could restrain the immortals very much. At that moment, everyone looked up at the sky. A milky white halo fell from the sky. The beam of light enveloped this row of 21 venerables. Many people subconsciously made a sound of comfort. The beam of light lasted for several minutes. Those who recovered first were naturally those at the beginner venerable realm. When the beam of light disappeared, these people were all shocked. Someone murmured, "Miracle! The damage has been completely repaired." Someone exclaimed, "Not only the damage to the foundation has been repaired, but even the countless internal injuries left on the battlefield have also been recovered." Countless people saw the surprised expressions on the faces of the martial supremacies. The injuries of a venerable were something that even a demi-king couldn't do anything about. It was a damage to the foundation. Han Fei could even cure this? Wouldn't the treatment work of those below the venerable realm be even easier? After another 10 minutes, the 5 mid-level venerables also recovered, and they also looked shocked. However, one of them, although there was surprise in his eyes, his heart was very excited. Someone from the outside world had come, and it was such a terrifying figure. If this person could even repair the injuries of venerables, then the strength of the venerable realm in the immortal city would soar by at least 30%. This was the horror of a terrifying spirit-gatherer venerable. With this big shot, the human venerables could almost go crazy. Wang He, how are you? Has the damage to your foundation been repaired? A venerable next to him asked with a happy face. Wang He immediately smiled and said, Of course, it's great. Even the internal injuries have been repaired. I'm just shocked. The venerable smiled and said, Me too. Finally, it was Lu Yuntian. Advanced venerables and mid-level venerables were different after all. It took Han Fei nearly 100 years of vitality to repair all the internal injuries in his body. Han Fei cursed in his heart. How can these bastards get injured so easily? Luckily, there are only about 20 of them. If there were more than 100 of them, I'm afraid I would have exhausted all my vitality. To be honest, Han Fei was certainly not happy that Lu Yuntian opposed him just now. However, on one hand, considering that his wounds were caused by the battle against the sea demons, it was a contribution to mankind. On the other hand, Han Fei really wanted to put on a show. Therefore, it was good that Lu Yuntian could cooperate with him. If he couldn't, Han Fei wouldn't care about him anymore. Just now, after this round of treatment, Han Fei consumed about 650 years of vitality in total, which was less than he expected. Fortunately, he was walking on the heavenly enlightenment Tao. If it was in the past, he could only forcefully use the Heaven Awakening Divine Technique, which would consume at least twice as much vitality as now. With a lifespan of less than 1,500 years, these people could not be saved at all. After saving these people, Han Fei was a little tired. After all, Yangming was only a middle-rank venerable one, and his abilities were limited. However, the show of a new official taking office was not over yet. Han Fei said, Now, tell me, and the 320,000 people present, have you recovered from the damage to your foundation? At this moment, the venerables were naturally happy. These people turned around and said to the crowd, This technique is miraculous. It can indeed repair the damage to the foundation. Someone said, Although Marshal Han has just arrived, he must have consumed a lot of energy to cast the miraculous healing technique. Lu Yuntian clasped his fists. From the perspective of the entire human race in the Immortal City, thank you. Han Fei didn't even look at Lu Yuntian, which made Lu Yuntian's face turn red again. This time, many venerables frowned, thinking Lu Yuntian took the initiative to express his goodwill, but Han Fei didn't like it. However, Han Fei did have the capital to be arrogant. Besides, it was said that Han Fei was only an intermediate venerable. With a high-rank venerable realm expert like Lu Yuntian above him, it was natural for him to feel uncomfortable. Some people frowned. Han Fei saved people but didn't treat them well. This was not the demeanor of a marshal. Lu Yuntian was probably also very dissatisfied. However, Han Fei's healing technique was really amazing. This was no wonder the hundreds of thousands of people present were shocked. Even so, many people still doubted Han Fei's ability. With the means of an intermediate venerable, could he kill 10 venerables in a year? Was this possible? Of course, at this moment, what most people were paying attention to was not this place. Everyone hoped that Han Fei could heal them immediately. And Han Fei's voice rippled. Human compatriots, next, I will first heal your basic injuries to the best of my ability, but I will not immediately help you repair your foundation. To tell you the truth, to repair the foundation of more than 20 venerables, it consumed nearly 1,000 years of my vitality. Wow! Many people sucked in a breath of cold air. A single healing technique that lasted only a few dozen breaths actually consumed 1,000 years of vitality? Was it so exaggerated? However, since these people could cultivate to the explorer realm, they naturally had their own plans. They thought about it carefully. Han Fei's words were probably true. First of all, among all the venerables in the entire Immortal City, no one could directly repair vitality. Even if there were strong masters who had great means to help people repair the foundation damage, they could only do it for 1 or 2 people. Besides, casting it once would consume a lot of their vitality. There was really no one like Han Fei. Secondly, they were no fools after cultivating for so long. No matter how strong a spirit gatherer's great path was, how could it reach such a terrifying level without paying anything? There was no such thing as getting benefits for no reason at all. Looking at the crowd, Han Fei's voice was leisurely. But don't panic, it's nothing more than a little vitality. When I go to the front line and slaughter some sea demons, there will be a way to extract some vitality and make up for it. So, don't wait too long. I can help you recover to your peak. Now, everyone, stand where you are and don't move. The next moment, Han Fei's figure had already appeared in the crowd. Chilla! Chains of holy light descended and quickly spread out like an electric net. At one time, it could cover hundreds of people. Who had ever seen such a healing technique? After all, being a spirit gatherer was just a path. This Tao could make one's self-healing ability stronger and make one's life more tenacious after they became stronger. At the same time, it could also be of great benefit in terms of arrays and spiritual energy absorption. However, it didn't have such a terrifying group healing ability. Therefore, when the chains of holy light spread out like a spider web and enveloped a large number of people, the onlookers, the undying venerables hiding in the dark, and the more than 300,000 explorers present were all stunned. Long Shi murmured, with the power of one person, he saved half of the strong people in the city. If there had been such a person in the immortal city, how could the human race have come to this day? There were too many people who had the same idea as Long Shi. These people were all stunned by Han Fei's magical healing technique. However, although the holy light technique didn't need to overdraft vitality, it needed a lot of spiritual energy and spiritual power to support it. Han Fei didn't lack spiritual energy, but overconsumption of spiritual power would also make people tired. Therefore, Han Fei only treated about 50,000 people and was already extremely tired. Han Fei closed his eyes, visualized the god scaring painting for a while, and then let out a sigh of relief. Han Fei shouted, "Okay! After all, I haven't reached my peak yet. I can't treat all of you at once. However, speed is the most important thing in war. My hunting plan has been decided. If you want to join me, then follow me to the front line. I won't force you. If you don't want to go, stay. If you want to follow me to kill the demons, follow me." Han Fei looked at a corner of the void, nodded slightly, and then looked at Long Shi. "Let's go. Lead the way." Han Fei said that those who didn't want to go could stay, but who would really stay? Han Fei's appearance had already proved his powerful healing technique. This meant that the damage to their foundation would inevitably be repaired. Besides, the power that Han Fei had shown so far was not weak. He could identify the undercover of the sea demons at a glance. Even the half-king didn't find that. Long Shi thought that he and Wenju just happened to meet Han Fei first. Above him, there were 5 intermediate venerables and Lu Yuntian, an advanced venerable. Han Fei actually asked him to lead the way? This was clearly not giving Lu Yuntian face. Lu Yuntian clenched his fist. However, he had received benefits from Han Fei, so at this moment, he couldn't lose his temper. Suddenly, several people cast a calm look at Lu Yuntian. Even 2 venerables walked up to Lu Yuntian. One of them said, "Old Lu." Another person patted Lu Yuntian on the shoulder and didn't speak. Han Fei had already taken the lead and flew out like Long Shi. Because there were a large number of explorers behind, these explorers didn't have the ability to resist the void cracks that appeared every once in a while. Therefore, these more than 300,000 people just took the normal route and didn't travel through the void. Long Shi said via voice transmission, "Han. General Han, since there are sea demons undercover on the islands behind us, then, is it a bit inappropriate for us to set off in such a big way? These undercover sea demons are endless, and it's hard to hide their eyes and ears." Han Fei sensed that there were more than one vague perception scattered around. Han Fei said directly, "It doesn't matter. I just can't tolerate traitors under my command. But in fact, this kind of thing is hard to avoid. With so many of us traveling, we will eventually be discovered. So why don't we tell them openly? If traitors were useful, the immortal city would have been destroyed long ago. In fact, the immortal city had always been focused on defense. Because of the lack of manpower, it rarely took the initiative to attack. Therefore, the existence of these undercover sea demons was actually of no use at all. It was like a stubborn city. Although there were undercover spies in the city, they were not good enough. If they were all worried that they would be discovered, that wouldn't work. What they were afraid of was that they would reveal some important information. In fact, hundreds of thousands of troops would eventually be discovered if they marched like this. This was not an important piece of information. As long as those undercover spies couldn't grasp some important information, they couldn't play any role. Maybe some sea demon undercover spies would even convey some wrong information, which would be used by Han Fei. Han Fei flew all the way. When he was about 800,000 kilometers away from the immortal city, a large number of islands appeared here. Han Fei scanned with his perception and found that the population on these islands became denser. In the direction of the immortal city, there were only a few people on an island. In the direction of the front line of the immortal city, there were all people living on the islands. On these islands, there were explorers, law enforcers, hidden fishers, and even cultivators below the level of explorer. There were almost people of all levels. Scanning with his perception, Han Fei found that there were no powerful marine creatures in these waters. However, there were many ordinary sea demons. This should be deliberately left by human beings for the younger generation to gain experience. In fact, most of these ordinary sea demons were not subordinates of the Black Blood Royal City. Only those who reached a certain level could be accepted by the Royal City. Han Fei looked at Long Shi and couldn't help asking, how many people usually live on such an island that is less than 1,000 kilometers long? Long Shi said, generally, there won't be too many people stationed on an island within 1,000 kilometers, about 500,000 people. With so many people, there is enough coastline for them to gain experience. Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1559. Of course, Han Fei understood. When he first arrived at the Scattered Stars Island, it was about 1,800 kilometers wide and had a population of about 5 to 6 million. In fact, when the battle between the Scattered Stars Island and the Sea Demons was relatively peaceful, there weren't many troops stationed in the front line. Most people stayed in the center of the island. In fact, most of the people in the city had higher cultivation levels. As for the troops stationed at the front line, they needed the most experience. Compared with the Scattered Stars Island, the islands outside the Immortal City were actually much safer. In this way, they only needed to have a population of less than 500,000. Flying all the way, Han Fei saw 40 or 50 islands like this. Han Fei couldn't help but think that the total population of the Immortal City must be more than 100 million. However, even so, it was still too little. Therefore, they could only be forced into a corner by Black Blood City. Han Fei swept across the sky with 300,000 troops and only talked to Long Shi during the whole process. After flying for more than 3 million kilometers, Han Fei looked at Long Shi again. Where is the Forbidden Island? Long Shi was stunned for a long time. Forbidden Island? It was close to the front lines, about 500,000 kilometers away. Commander Han, we can't station ourselves on the Forbidden Island. Living there was bound to be a problem. There were too many threats on that island. As soon as we set foot on the island, there will be danger. Han Fei asked, are there any islands nearby? Long Shi immediately said, there is. Within 300,000 kilometers of the Forbidden Island, there were 5 large islands. If we go to the front lines, it would be best if we set up camp on an island about 100,000 kilometers away from the front lines. Only in this way can we effectively grasp the opportunity to act. Han Fei shook his head. Take me to the Forbidden Island. I want one of the nearby islands. Han Fei came with the permission of the Netherworld. He wanted an island, unconditionally. According to Nether's plan, it would be best for Han Fei to go to the island on the front line. With Han Fei's combat power at the peak level of the Venerable Realm, he would be able to guard one side. Even Long Shi and the others were stunned. Why did Han Fei ask Lord Netherworld for power so aggressively? However, when it came to the front line, you actually wanted an island that was 500,000 miles away from the front line? Han Fei didn't deliberately hide what he said. Therefore, Lu Yuntian and the other venerables could hear it. At this moment, these people were a little confused. Didn't they say that speed was the most important in war? Could it be that this was some sort of battle strategy? When a large group traveled, their speed was naturally slower. The front line had already received the news from the undead city. Therefore, when Han Fei's army flew within 1,000,000 kilometers of the front line, the major human islands had already begun to issue orders. Another 500,000 kilometers into the front line, Han Fei found that someone had been waiting on his route. Han Fei shouted, "All troops, stop!" Han Fei stepped on the void and crossed 100 kilometers with one step, arriving in front of those people. Behind Han Fei, only Long Shi followed. Waiting for Han Fei were two peak-level venerable powerhouses, an undying and a human female powerhouse. The woman's face was cold, but she had the demeanor of a powerhouse. His hair and robes fluttered in the wind. He wore green armor and clenched his fist. She wasn't the pretty type. Her face was slightly square, which matched her temperament perfectly. The woman looked at Han Fei carefully. "Are you Han Fei?" Han Fei smiled. "Who are you?" The woman raised her head slightly. "The 726th Supreme Commander of the Scattered Stars Island." Han Fei grinned. "Me? Are you testing my memory? The history of the Scattered Stars Island doesn't run from the Age of Doom to the present, but from more than 25,000 years ago. Now, I'm the 886th Supreme Commander. The 726th, that is, 3,800 years ago. It's not too long ago. A female Supreme Commander. Hee, are you Chen Xiang?" In the history of the Scattered Stars Island, there were many cases where women were in power. Among the more than 800 Supreme Commanders, if Han Fei remembered correctly, there were 269 female Supreme Commanders. When Han Fei tracked down Tang Yan's information, he read this part of the history, so he naturally remembered who Chen Xiang was. It could be said that the Supreme Commander of every generation was a hero of the generation. This woman, Chen Xiang, was most famous not when she was in office, but in her last battle. It was said that in a battle of powerhouses, she was surrounded. At that time, she was only a peak-level junior venerable, but she once defeated 5 sea demon venerables by herself. In the end, there were 3 cracks in the sky, and a rain of blood fell. Since then, Chen Xiang had never appeared again. Everyone thought that Chen Xiang was dead. However, her achievements were not forgotten. After all, it was 1 against 5, killing 2 great supremacies, which made the sea demons' hearts turn cold. But now it seemed that this was not the case. After this woman killed 3 venerables in a row, she finally escaped into the Wall of Death. That was more than 3,800 years ago. At that time, there were still many venerables. Han Fei recalled all this and smiled. "I know you. Unfortunately, your achievements are not as good as mine." Han Fei was as strong as ever. Facing Chen Xiang, he was still arrogant. Chen Xiang's eyes had already lit up when Han Fei called her name just now. However, with Han Fei's personality, was he really suitable to be the Supreme Commander? Chen Xiang said, "I heard that you liberated the Scattered Stars Island? You mean the sea demons outside the Scattered Stars Island have been wiped out? That's tens of millions of sea demons, right?" Han Fei sneered. "I'm talking about the venerables. Once the venerables are dead, which sea demon dares to make trouble? They are just stepping stones for human experience." Chen Xiang frowned. There are many venerables outside? I don't think so. How many venerables can there be in the past 3,800 years? Everyone looked at Han Fei, waiting to see how Han Fei would answer. After all, they were the two successors of the Supreme Commander of the Scattered Stars Island. They should know the Scattered Stars Island very well. Han Fei said, "The Black Killer Snail King's projection arrived. 3 semi-king level projections, plus Chao Xian, Ziyuchuan, Mo Lin, and more than 10. I killed them all. Why are you interrogating me?" Chen Xiang narrowed her eyes slightly. She had heard the news from the Undying. Not to mention how the people from the Black Blood City got out, even if she knew the names of Chao Xian and Ziyuchuan, so what? What Chen Xiang was worried about was that the sea demons had the means to turn into humans, and Han Fei appeared too suddenly. He wanted to seize power and threatened to kill 10 venerables. He also brought all the wounded on the other side of the Undying City. If something happened, the price would be so heavy that the Undying City couldn't afford it. Seeing Chen Xiang's expression, Han Fei smiled. "It seems that you don't believe me?" Chen Xiang said. "If you want me to believe you, give me a reason. Since you can say my name, I admit that you must have something to do with the Scattered Stars Island. However, this is not enough. How do I know whether the Scattered Stars Island has been destroyed or not? How do I know whether you are a royal mermaid?" Han Fei frowned. Chen Xiang knows the royal mermaid? It seems that the mermaids are perfect after transforming, just like Xia Shaochan. Just like Xia Shaochan, she was so perfect that it was easy for her to learn the 5 major human professions. Han Fei tilted his head and said, "Then why do you believe me?" Chen Xiang shrugged. "It depends on what other reasons you can give." Han Fei sneered. "Do you think I have to ask for your permission?" Chen Xiang said, "It's about hundreds of thousands of people in the Undying City. Since you are the Supreme Commander of the Scattered Stars Island, it's only natural for you to explain your identity." Han Fei said indifferently, "Then let me see. How much do you know about the Scattered Stars Island? First of all, do you know the Yin-Yang sky?" Chen Xiang frowned slightly. "Where?" Han Fei sneered. "Above the Thousand-Star City, where the central holy city can lead." Chen Xiang frowned even more. "You mean the central holy city that no one has ever been able to enter?" Han Fei said indifferently, "I don't know the Yin-Yang sky. Do you know the Thug Academy?" Chen Xiang nodded. "I do. The head of the 8 academies, Immortal Li, overshadowed the Thousand-Star City alone." Han Fei thought to himself, "Old Li is really something. He has already overshadowed the Thousand-Star City 3,800 years ago? That's pretty good." Han Fei shrugged. "Well, I'm from the Thug Academy." Chen Xiang asked, "How can you prove it?" Han Fei almost lost his temper. His eyelids twitching, he suddenly asked, "How can you prove that you are Chen Xiang?" "Chen Xiang." Han Fei curled his lips. "Just because you say that you are the 726th Supreme Commander?" Next to him, the Undying said, "Chen Xiang has been in the Undying City for 3,800 years and has killed more than 10 enemies. She can prove her identity." Han Fei sneered. "The Black Killer Snail can prove my identity, but can you believe it? I once killed his projection with my own hands. Why don't you ask him and see how he reacts? If you continue to pester me, don't blame me for being angry. Get out of my way." Chen Xiang and the Undying were not in a hurry. However, in Han Fei's team, Wang He's heart did a flip and he silently remembered it. Chen Xiang said, "Okay, you said you killed the projection of the Black Killer Snail King? We'll know after we try. Let's see how you, an intermediate venerable, can kill a half-king." F***ck Han Fei was dumbfounded. He didn't expect that the Undying would persuade him. But when it came to the former Supreme Commander of the Scattered Stars Island, it didn't make sense. There were more than 3,800 years between then and now. She hadn't experienced the era of slaughter caused by Tang Yen. She didn't know about the destruction of the Thug Academy either. Even if she knew, as long as she didn't believe it, she could still find countless reasons. Han Fei's aura soared crazily. Suddenly, Long Shi and the others were all horrified. Their bodies were trembling slightly. Han Fei's killing intent was boiling. Come on! Han Fei took a step and clasped at the void with one hand. A 300-kilometer floating cloud was clasped in Han Fei's hand, and thousands of knife shadows converged into a sword. At that moment, the sky and the earth lost their color and became dim. All around, countless venerables watching the battle were shocked. Is this a F** King Intermediate Venerable? Who the F** is kidding me? Long Shi and the others were dumbfounded. Someone was dumbfounded. No wonder he dares to be so arrogant. Oh my God! Lu Yuntian's eyes widened. How could he take this attack? Chen Xiang was also shocked. Han Fei's attack was so terrifying that it even absorbed a massive amount of power around him. She shouted, "Are you crazy? Why are you fighting here?" Han Fei shouted, "The immortal city has been destroyed like this. Why can't I fight here?" Chen Xiang activated her Dao, and the invisible air around her fluctuated. It turned out that Chen Xiang's Dao was the power to control the air between heaven and earth, and this power was nothing more than the use of pressure. The void exploded crazily with a series of bangs. Venerable Chen Xiang's peak-level power burst out and blasted 7 times in a row before she finally shattered Han Fei's attack. Swish! However, in the next moment, a restriction spell was activated. A big stick flew across the sky and knocked on the heavenly gate, ignoring space and time. The distance of hundreds of kilometers was covered in an instant. How could Chen Xiang react in time? She was instantly blocked. In an instant, half of her body was blown off, leaving only half of her head and a complete golden arm. Han Fei took a look and sneered. Golden body? With just this little bit of golden body, you're nothing to me. Stop. Han Fei, stop. Han Fei, are you crazy? Do you want to kill your own people? Although the two were tens of thousands of meters high in the sky, their terrifying power shook the world and countless venerables rushed over. A demi-king crossed the void and stood in front of Han Fei. Lu Yuntian had been resisting the void storm with all his strength these days. What the hell, a single strike could directly crush any one of them into pieces. Humph! Han Fei snorted coldly. Prove this, prove that. In the end, it's just a matter of strength. Next time you talk to me, watch your words. Everyone, third. Asking for votes. Moi. End of this chapter. Chapter 1560. A middle-level venerable blew up a peak-level venerable with a punch and a stick. This kind of fantasy happened in front of everyone today. For a moment, all the onlookers fell silent. Long Shi, Lu Yuntian, and the others were all horrified. This Han Fei was like a god of slaughter. He could easily blow up a peak-level venerable? What about ordinary venerables? Long Shi couldn't help but recall the scene when he attacked Han Fei. From the beginning to the end, Han Fei just flicked his fingers. As for the explorers like Wenju, they had long been dumbfounded. They didn't know whether it was a good thing or a bad thing that their commander was such a tough character. Above the void, Chen Xiang's body gathered again. When she fully recovered, her face was full of shock. This man was so domineering. The combination of his combat skills was almost impeccable. He could even seal the void and block the Great Way. What kind of Great Way was this? If no one could believe that Han Fei could kill a half-king as a middle-level venerable, but now it seemed that it was not impossible. Chen Xiang was already a peak-level venerable, but she was blown up before Han Fei could even make 2 moves. If it weren't for the golden bones, she would have been blown into dust. Even when Han Fei saw a half-king undead standing in front of him, his voice was still fierce. Han Fei's cold voice echoed between heaven and earth. From now on, I'll lead an area alone. Don't talk to me like that again. If you have any doubts, please think about it first. Not everyone has the right to question me. Han Fei was strong, powerful, domineering, and fierce. Chen Xiang's face became gloomy. This person was indeed strong, but according to the normal selection criteria of the Scattered Stars Island, such a person shouldn't be chosen to be the supreme commander of the Scattered Stars Island, right? Did something really happen in the outside world? The Half-King Undead said, "You're wrong. You came from the same place, so you didn't have to fight." Han Fei chuckled. "We came from the same place, but people born in the same place are different. I won't hold you accountable for what happened today. Now I want an island. I'll choose one near the Forbidden Island." The Half-King Undead also saw Han Fei's strength. To be honest, he was not sure if he could defeat Han Fei directly. After all, everyone had witnessed Han Fei's strength just now. Even if they could not defeat such an expert, if the other party only wanted to escape, how many people here would be able to capture him? Besides, Han Fei's Tao restrained the Undying like them. The Half-King was quite decisive. Han Fei was too aggressive in his actions and words, and no one knew what he was up to. However, Han Fei claimed that he would kill 10 of them within a year. Since he had already spoken such ruthless words, there was naturally no need to stop him. Everyone could afford to wait for a mere year. All they had to do was wait and see. Confronting Chen Xiang, Han Fei turned his head and glanced at Long Shi and the others. "Let's go." At this moment, Han Fei had shown his super-powerful means. Who dared to refute him? Besides, Han Fei's style was completely different from what Wen Zhu and the others had seen at the beginning. Not gentle at all. However, no one dared to resist this kind of strength. After Han Fei led the crowd away, many venerables flew over. Someone frowned. "Is Grand Monarch Dust Fragrance hurt?" Chen Xiang shook her head. "This person's strength is indeed terrifying. Especially his strength. He is definitely at the Half-King level." Someone said, "This Han Fei showed a disdainful expression when he saw your golden bones. Does this mean that he has also embarked on this path? And he has gone quite far?" Many people were tempted to hear this. This possibility was extremely high. The Half-King Undying said, "Don't argue with this Han Fei. He came in a domineering manner and said that he would kill 10 venerables in a year. Just wait and see. Besides, his strength is not weak. In this way, our frontline battlefield is equivalent to being guarded by 4 half-kings, which can indeed be said to be a great increase in strength." Someone also said, "Sister Xiang, don't argue with him now. I heard that this person's healing skills are unparalleled in the world, and he uses the legendary Heavenly Awakening divine technique. Why don't you let him cure all the people he brought?" Chen Xiang snorted. "I'm not that petty. What I'm thinking is, this person is too domineering. Will he be obstinate? Is he a qualified commander?" Someone wondered, "Doesn't he look like a commander? I think it's quite similar." Chen Xiang shook her head. "No. His personality is too radical. As a commander, he needs to consider the life and death of millions of people. There are too many things to consider. In theory, this shouldn't be the case. That's why I have doubts." While Chen Xiang and the others were discussing Han Fei had led the crowd to fly around the Forbidden Island. There were 5 islands here that were close to the Forbidden Island because they were a certain distance from the front line. Therefore, on these 5 islands, there was only one peak-level Venerable Undying guarding them. The others were all explorers and law enforcers. In total, there were not many of them. Among them, there were only about tens of thousands of explorers and hundreds of thousands of law enforcers. At least, the group of people led by Han Fei could easily sweep these 5 islands. It could be seen that Han Fei was lucky to come to the Immortal City from the direction of the Beast Island. He happened to come to the rear of the human race and happened to meet these injured human powerhouses whose realms were definitely not low. Now, these people had all been recruited by him. Although Han Fei's way of recruiting people was too tough. However, as long as these people were recruited, Han Fei had his own ways to capture their trust. When Han Fei and the others arrived, the peak-level Venerable Undying appeared beside Han Fei and said, "My name is Yi Qian. I was appointed by Lord Netherworld to work for you." Han Fei nodded slightly. This was a matter of course. In any case, he was a newcomer, and they couldn't really give him power all at once. If he wanted to bring these people to the frontline battlefield, there would definitely be other strong powerhouses following them. After all, the people he led were also extremely important. Even if their foundation was damaged, they could reproduce and impart experience, right? Han Fei said, "Got it." After circling around, Han Fei finally chose an island only 120,000 kilometers away from the Forbidden Island. This island was enshrouded in blue light. What was a little puzzling was that this island was not the best of the 5 islands, but the worst of the 5 islands. The island protecting boundary was generally invisible. After the blessing of the immortal city for tens of thousands of years, the island protecting boundary was basically perfect on a safe island. However, this island only had a radius of 800 kilometers. The forest was dilapidated, and part of the beach had been eroded. There were also volcanoes on the island. In the air, there were some tiny floating particles which were not good. Han Fei immediately asked, "What's the name of this island?" Yi Qian said, "This is the Firestone Island. It got its name because some useless firestones are produced on the island. Because there are few strong powerhouses near the Forbidden Island. So, there are a lot of marine creatures around. The closer you are to the Forbidden Island, the more marine creatures there are. So, some places have been damaged." Han Fei nodded and said, "Okay. We're going to this island. Everyone, station on the Firestone Island and clear the island." In fact, many people were puzzled when Han Fei chose this island. After all, Han Fei's purpose seemed to be the Forbidden Island. Did Han Fei choose this island because he wanted to go to the Forbidden Island? Among all of them, only Wen Zhu knew that Han Fei had been to the Forbidden Island once. That was when the Forbidden Island disappeared, and Han Fei had been there in the outside world. Because of Han Fei's strong personality, he didn't explain much to these people and seemed to disdain to explain. Han Fei shouted, "All those who have not recovered their foundation, station temporarily and are not allowed to leave the island." Long Shi Chen Yu. Long Shi and Chen Yu cupped their hands. "General Han." Han Fei said, "During my absence, no one is allowed to leave the island without permission. Otherwise, you too will be held responsible." Han Fei said, "Hua Meng." The bald man cupped his hands. "General Han." Han Fei said, "Stay here. Later, I have something for you to do." Hua Meng was taken aback for a moment, but he obeyed without hesitation. Anyway, he believed that Han Fei was a real human powerhouse. The magic of the apocalyptic divine technique had already convinced him. And just now, the scene of Han Fei blowing up Chen Xiang with 2 blows was still imprinted in his mind. But Hua Meng didn't know that the reason why Han Fei chose him was because of the choice of the navigator, not Han Fei's own choice. After giving the order, Han Fei looked at everyone else. "The others, move freely on the island and wait for my return." Then Han Fei looked at Yi Qian. "Later, come with me. I need to learn about the environment and the battle situation on the front line." Very quickly, Han Fei arranged everything, took Hua Meng to the side, and said, "Go to the 10,000 Beast Island." Han Fei and Yi Qian went directly to the front line. Yi Qian asked, "Are you going to hunt venerables?" The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. "I'm just going to watch the battlefield." Yi Qian immediately frowned and thought, what's the point of watching the battlefield? Or is the thinking of a commander-level figure different from that of a normal person? Thinking that Han Fei might want to observe something useful, Yi Qian didn't ask anything. Anyway, she had to keep an eye on Han Fei. About a moment later, when Han Fei came to the battlefield of the so-called Immortal City, he found that this place was very different from the battlefield in the Life and Death Gorge. The Life and Death Gorge only had a front line of more than 200,000 kilometers. Here, Han Fei asked and learned that the front line on the human side was actually more than 800,000 kilometers wide. There were only 7 islands in this 800,000-kilometer front line. However, these 7 islands were obviously artificially piled up. On each island, there were at least 1 or 2 peak-level venerables guarding it. Yi Qian said, "Here, there are a total of 3 half-king realm powerhouses, who are guarding the 2nd, 4th, and 6th islands respectively." Listening to Yi Qian's explanation, human beings used 7 islands to block the territory between human beings and sea demons and built the so-called land. Between the islands, the part under the sea was very shallow. It was clear that these islands had been set up very deliberately. They had made use of some special topography to separate the islands. After all, human beings still liked land. Fighting on land was what human beings were best at. Han Fei estimated that if the terrain allowed, human beings would definitely build this 800,000-kilometer front line into a complete and undivided island. Chapter 1561. When Han Fei stood at the front line of the Immortal City, he found that there were not many battles here. They were all people below the Explorer realm fighting against each other. Besides, many of these people were immortals. Seeing this situation, Han Fei immediately understood what was going on. After all, the battles in the cage had been going on for tens of thousands of years. Could it be said that the enemy and his side were inseparable? Those humans had all died a long time ago. Even Black Blood City couldn't withstand this kind of death. Therefore, the two sides were just in a stalemate. Without absolute certainty, they didn't launch a destructive war. Of course, there was another possibility, which was that the Black Blood City wanted to break out of the cage, so in the past hundreds of years, they didn't deliberately launch a large-scale war. At this time, although the front line in front of Han Fei was relatively long, the battle was much smaller than that on the Life and Death Gorge. On the Life and Death Gorge there was a special battlefield. Usually, a few explorers could fight for a day. Of course, there were usually not many people who died. Sometimes, no one died for several days in a row. On the human side, there were mostly some hidden fishers and law enforcers fighting with marine creatures. This situation was a bit similar to the Scattered Stars Island. The whole island was a battlefront, and the strong were just guarding to prevent accidents. However, a little different from the Scattered Stars Island was that there were almost no particularly low-level marine creatures here. There were dangling fishers and hanging fishers. It couldn't be said that there weren't any, but there were very, very few of them. Of course, this was also because the outside environment was very harsh, and those low-level creatures usually had to hide in the seal. Han Fei was speechless when he saw this scene. If this was all there was to it, how could he slaughter the 10 Supremes if he couldn't even perform a big show? As if knowing what Han Fei was thinking, Yi Qian said, "Don't be confused by the scene in front of you. Battles can't be carried out every day. There are battles, but it's impossible for hundreds of thousands of people to fight at once. The cage is not like the outside world. If a large-scale war breaks out, even if the Black Blood City wants to eat the Immortal City, it will inevitably suffer heavy losses. They don't dare to do so. They also have to consider their own rear." Han Fei asked, "When will there be a slightly larger battle?" Yi Qian replied, "There is an average of 1 venerable battle a month. Large-scale venerable battles were held once a year. In the past, it was rare for one to die in a year. In the past 2 years, it had increased slightly. On the other hand, battles between explorers happen every day. Although there aren't many human venerables, their fighting style is fierce. Therefore, the injured people you saw at the rear of the City of the Undying were all heavily injured in this kind of challenge." At this moment, Han Fei and Yi Qian came to the second island, where there were half-king realm immortals. The man looked at Han Fei from a distance, and Han Fei looked back at him from a distance without saying anything. Apart from the half-king, Han Fei sensed 7 or 8 venerables, all of whom were immortals. Some of them were strong and some were weak, but none of them were at the peak of the venerable realm. In Han Fei's perception, the second island was basically full of immortals. How many venerables are there on the front line? Yi Qian said, if you add the venerable ones you brought back now, there are about 100 of them. However, in his heart, the old turtle said bluntly, Bulsh *t, including the ones you brought, there are only 86 of them. Han Fei curled his lips slightly. That's more like what the old turtle said. Including about 30 venerables from the City of the Undying, the total number of venerables was only about 120. The number of venerables even exceeded that of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. However, this was not the Shuemu Heaven after all. The enemies here were not the Baibei Royal City or the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. The Black Blood City had a fake king. There were nearly 300 venerables, more than twice as many as yours. Han Fei observed all the way, and when he came to the fourth island, he was ready to stop. This was the most special island in Han Fei's view. Here, the immortals and humans built camps and lived on this island at the same time. At this moment, outside the battlefield, two explorers were fighting. When Han Fei saw it, the human powerhouse was exchanging lives with the half-mermaid powerhouse with a sword. Yes, what Han Fei saw was exchanging lives with the half-mermaid powerhouse. The human powerhouse only had half of the long sword left in his hand, and one of his arms was hanging down. The half-mermaid on the opposite side was not in a good situation either. His chest had been pierced. At this moment, both sides were staking everything on a single throw and were ready to risk their lives. However, at the last moment, the human powerhouse's crippled arm suddenly swung up. The hand left his body, turned into a long sword, and condensed into a sword light. Poochie! The half-mermaid powerhouse was cut in half. And the human powerhouse lost an arm and his chest was pierced, but he was still smiling crazily. Nice kill. Uncle Da is awesome. Sea demon thieves, let's see if you can still be arrogant. On the human side, many onlookers were cheering. Seeing this scene, Yi Qian immediately said, Are you going to save him? With your abilities, it shouldn't be very troublesome for you to save this person. Han Fei said with a smile, It's not troublesome, but it's relative. When I save people, I have to consume vitality. You can organize a group, or let the injured bring the life spirit fruit, or bring the explorer-level sirens to Flint Island. I can help all of them. Otherwise, how can I run across the 800,000 kilometers of coastline? I'm not here to save people, but to slaughter demons. Yi Qian's eyes lit up. Really? Han Fei said, Of course. You can tell them about this now. Yi Qian immediately sent a voice transmission. After only a minute, with a swish, a half-king appeared next to Han Fei. Yi Qian said, Han Fei, this is Grand Venerable Ganfeng, a half-king. Ganfeng threw out more than 500 spiritual fruits casually and said, How many people can this save? Seeing that the man was serious and only talked about business in front of him, Han Fei naturally did the same. Who? Bam! 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 More than 500 spiritual fruits were shattered in an instant, turned into energy, and swallowed by Han Fei. Han Fei didn't have much hope in swallowing them. However, after swallowing them, Han Fei felt that his vitality had been restored to about 300 years. Han Fei's eyes immediately lit up. These spiritual fruits? Ganfeng said, After all, the immortal city governs thousands of kilometers of the sea. Although it doesn't produce many spiritual fruits, you know the harsh conditions in the cage. The spiritual fruits that can be born in such harsh conditions are naturally tenacious. Han Fei said straightforwardly, There are 3 beginner venerables, 2 intermediate venerables or 1 advanced venerables. For explorers, there are 30 half-venerables, 50 half-venerables. Of course, it depends on how damaged they are and how much energy they consume. Ganfeng's eyelids twitched. How could a mere 500 spiritual fruits of life have such a great effect on Han Fei? This kind of spiritual fruit could only save a person's life at most. For explorers whose foundation was damaged, even if they ate 100 of them, they might not be able to recover from the damage. However, when it came to Han Fei, he had to heal 50 explorers. Ganfeng said, "In 3 days, I will personally take some people to the Firestone Island with the spiritual fruits of life." Han Fei smiled. "Don't you need me to save people today?" Ganfeng nodded. 3 days later. Han Fei smiled. "Okay. Have you finished the Battle of Venerables this month?" Ganfeng and Yi Qian both looked at him. Then, Ganfeng shook her head. "Not yet. Are you going to show up as soon as you come?" Han Fei said casually, "You have to keep your promise. However, I will not make a move today. Remember to inform me when the other party requests a venerable battle. It's best if you can help me make an appointment with a middle-grade venerable at the peak." Seeing that Ganfeng was puzzled, Han Fei smiled and said, "It's not my style to kill a venerable in one go." Ganfeng and Yi Qian looked at each other and thought, Han Fei is really arrogant. From what he said, he probably wanted to kill 2 supremacies in one go. Han Fei's perception swept the surrounding 30,000 kilometers. Because his perception was not concealed, many people cast a puzzled look at him in an instant. At the same time, Han Fei said telepathically, "I just want to meet you." In fact, because he hadn't seen these people face to face, he wasn't sure if there were spies among them. At that moment, the panorama navigator spun for a moment, but it didn't find any spies amongst these venerable realm experts, and Han Fei couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. As long as there were no spies. Han Fei had always suspected that there would also be spies on this island. Because, among his subordinates, there was a person named Wang He who was suspicious. He had confirmed that, since they were spies, there must be a way to deliver information or someone to help them. Seeing that they weren't on this island, Han Fei naturally greeted these venerables. Today, Black Blood City had lost a high-ranking explorer. After the battle, not only did the 2 sides not challenge each other, but they also gradually quieted down. Perhaps, in the eyes of many people, it was already very difficult to kill an opponent's advanced explorer in one day. However, in Han Fei's opinion, such a way of fighting could last for another 10,000 years. It was very likely that this was a conspiracy of Black Blood Royal City. Otherwise, if they really wanted to fight, would Black Blood Royal City only send these people? After watching this battle, Han Fei suddenly said, "Guys, do you mind if I go into the sea and hunt some explorer-level monsters to replenish my vitality?" Ganfeng immediately frowned. "Are you going deep into Black Blood City?" Han Fei shook his head slightly. "Why do you have to go deep into Black Blood City? I probably only need to hunt 100 or so explorers. 4 hours is enough for me to come back." Yi Qian looked at Ganfeng, and Ganfeng thought for a moment. Han Fei finally got people from the Immortal City, came to the front line, and even fought with Chen Xiang to prove his strength. He didn't have to go into the sea, did he? Even if Han Fei went to the sea, even if Han Fei went undercover and contacted the venerables of Black Blood City, what could he do? However, neither Ganfeng nor Chen Xiang dared to gamble. Ganfeng said, "Sorry, you're new here, and I dare not let you go to the sea alone. We're also being monitored and can't go with you. So, if you want to survive, you need explorer-level experts. I'll find a way." Han Fei nodded slightly. Indeed, if he asked to go to the sea and go deep into the territory of Black Blood City, many people would definitely feel uneasy. Han Fei nodded. "Okay. There's still a long way to go. I'm not in a hurry." Chapter 1562. Seeing that there was no chance to help on the front line, Han Fei returned to the Firestone Island. For 3 days in a row, Han Fei healed these people. Yes, the first step was to heal with the holy light chains. If he used the apocalyptic divine technique on a large scale, he would definitely be overwhelmed. 3 days later, in front of Han Fei stood 50 explorers. Han Fei found 5 explorers, ranging from junior explorers to semi-venerables, to treat them. Each time, the number of people treated was 10. At this moment, 10 junior explorers stood in front of him, only to see 10 beams of light descending. In just a short span of 5 breaths, these sacred pillars of light had disappeared. Huh? No vitality was consumed? After entering the wall of death, this was the first time that Han Fei had used the apocalyptic divine technique on a small scale. In the past few times, he used the apocalyptic divine technique to treat venerables and a large number of explorers. Therefore, he consumed a lot of vitality. Before advancing to the venerable realm, Han Fei had always thought that using the apocalyptic divine technique required vitality. However, at this moment, when he used the apocalyptic divine technique on the junior explorers, not only did they recover extremely fast, but he also didn't need to consume any vitality. This was undoubtedly a great piece of news. Of these 320,000 people, 130,000 were beginner explorers. Originally, Han Fei was still having a headache. The battle on the front line was not fierce, so he could only rely on the spiritual fruits of life found by Ganfeng. Or, he could only go to the spiritual orchard on the Forbidden Island. However, the spiritual orchard was not full of spiritual fruit. Many of the fruits there were special lives. Besides, the main purpose of setting up the base on the Firestone Island was of course not the spiritual orchard, but the grassland. Han Fei had always felt that maybe many people were wrong. In the cage there were kings. However, no one could find this king. Back then, he encountered the barren grave on that grassland. When he entered it, Han Fei saw that terrifying figure. At that time, Han Fei wondered what realm this person was in. After all, when the 3 kings were observing from the outside, they didn't discover the secret of this barren grave at all. Even the old turtle couldn't describe the realm of that figure at that time. He couldn't even tell whether he was inside or outside the grave. Since he didn't need to consume much of his life force to return to the beginner level of explorer, things would be much easier. Of course, Han Fei waved his hand expressionlessly and said, "Intermediate explorer, come here." When the second batch of 10 intermediate explorers walked up to Han Fei, they were still a little uneasy. Holy light surged on Han Fei's body, followed by the heavenly revelation. This time, Han Fei was surprised to find that it only took him less than 2 years to heal 10 intermediate explorers. To be precise, it was about 1.5 years. This consumption was also not considered high. However, it wasn't a small amount. If that was the case, healing 10,000 intermediate explorers would require 1,500 years of life force. Even this consumption was not something he could afford. Therefore, he still needed Ganfeng to provide him with enough spiritual fruits of life. After a while, he tried them one by one. After testing, the amount of life force consumed to heal those above the intermediate explorer rank began to soar. 10 advanced explorers, 5 years worth of life. 10 peak-level explorers needed 12 years to live. 10 demigods needed 20 years to live. This meant that it would take about 2 years of vitality to restore the foundation of a demigod with the great path of heavenly revelation. In this way, to heal a total of 50 explorers today, Han Fei only consumed about 38 years of vitality. This was the difference between the explorer realm and the venerable realm. 38 years of vitality was probably only enough to restore the foundation of an intermediate venerable. These healed explorers only felt that their state had been restored to its peak. It was really as amazing as the great venerables said. These explorers who were healed by Han Fei looked at Han Fei in a different way. If Han Fei was tough before, everyone would tremble with fear when they saw him. But now, Han Fei didn't look fierce at all after treating people for the past few days. Therefore, everyone was secretly guessing and discussing that Han Fei might only be so tough and domineering when he regarded himself as the supreme commander in a battle. On normal days, he even looked a little sunny. "Thank you, General Han, for healing us." The 40 or 50 explorers all cupped their hands. Then, one of them even took out a sea-swallowing seashell. Well, General Han, we know that healing the damage to your foundation requires your vitality. We heard that life-type spiritual fruits can help you restore vitality. I've collected a little here, only about 30 of them. This may be a little, but we didn't know how to accumulate spiritual fruits before, so we just thought they were disposable consumables. So, when we can't absorb spiritual energy fast enough during the war, we just use them. Han Fei nodded slightly. Okay. Just leave them. I'll take them. These more than 30 spiritual fruits suddenly floated in the air. In the next moment they suddenly shattered. Han Fei opened his mouth and sucked them up in one gulp. The explorers looked at each other in shock. Han Fei felt that he had recovered about 19 years of vitality. It was better than nothing. It was equivalent to recovering 50 people with 19 years of vitality. This price was worth it. When he mentioned it to Ganfeng before, it was only a preliminary estimate, so he naturally wanted to deduct part of the commission. He couldn't tell Ganfeng, if you give me 300 years of vitality, I will save at least 100 people for you. In that case, he would only treat the people on the front line. How could he save the people on his side? Now, it had been proved that even if he saved 50 semi-venerables, it would only consume 100 years of vitality. If he only saved people below the semi-venerable level, the consumption would be even lower. Suddenly, the old turtle said, Han Fei boy, I always feel that since you can use the combat power of a peak-level venerable, why can't your Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique be a level higher? If you use the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique with the strength of a peak-level venerable, will the effect be better? Or could it be that your great Tao can only increase your strength? Han Fei's heart did a flip. Yes, he had never thought of using his Tao on the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique. In fact, he didn't intend to practice the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique at all. After all, he didn't know which powerful figure was behind this scheme. He was waiting to harvest him, including the 4 major professions of human beings. Obviously, behind these, there were powerful figures waiting to harvest. However, his Tao could be switched and he could completely ignore this. Therefore, Han Fei was reassured. However, although he was not afraid of being harvested by a powerful figure, the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique could not be deduced and could only be comprehended. After being reminded by the old turtle, Han Fei recalled the third effect of the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique. Those who practice this Tao will have their lifespan doubled. The effect of life overdraft will gradually decrease with the growth of strength. Generally speaking, the lifespan of a venerable will begin to decline after 5,000 years. To live to 10,000 years? It was already very difficult. However, if he walked on the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique, he would have a lifespan of 10,000 years. Besides, the effect of casting the technique was more than twice as good as before. According to the growth of his strength, the consumption of each use would only be lower and lower. Then, he could indeed try to use the effect of his Jasper Stone Bridge on the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique. With this thought in mind, Han Fei's perception swept out, and with a swish, he entered his mansion. In fact, it was just a casually built wooden house, surrounded by layers of seals. With a thought in Han Fei's mind, the Jasper Stone Bridge appeared. Then, Han Fei walked up. This time, Han Fei's thought was to increase the effect of the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique by 3 times. Because it was the first time he had used this effect, he had to walk on the Jasper Stone Bridge. However, it was easy to get on the bridge, but when he got off the bridge to the 5th floor, in addition to the pressure, there was also a milky white halo appearing in front of him. Han Fei was shocked to discover that this was a kind of Tao, an unknown kind of Tao belonging to the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique. Han Fei immediately wanted to absorb these Taoist auras. However, they were not useful to him at all. The road of 3 times the effect couldn't be taken in the end. Being able to overcome the limit of 3 times the combat power didn't mean that he could also cross 3 times the distance on another Dao. Han Fei failed gloriously. However, there were a total of 8 steps, and he had already gone down 5 floors. There was no need to go to the 6th floor. Han Fei thought in his mind and started again. The second time, too. 5 times the effect, he couldn't go down to the 8th floor. In the end, the effect Han Fei obtained was 3 times. But even so, Han Fei was already very happy. This meant that after consuming 38 years of vitality, it was possible for him to save 115 people. Suddenly, Han Fei frowned. Someone is coming. The array was opened, and Han Fei walked out of the mansion, only to see that Yi Qian and Ganfeng had already arrived. When he saw Ganfeng, Han Fei perceived and found that more than 30,000 people had come hundreds of kilometers away. Ganfeng said, "The ones I brought all suffered minor damage to their foundations. It's not very serious. They are all explorers. There may be a lot of people, but I have collected a total of 31,820 spiritual fruit. For the time being. It may not be enough, but I'll heal as many as I can." Han Fei said lightly, "I'll go and see the extent of their injuries." Han Fei reached out and took Ganfeng's Sunmoon shell. In one step, he came to those explorers. Ganfeng and Yi Qian arrived almost at the same time as Han Fei. After all, the distance was too close. For these people, it was not a distance at all. Han Fei glanced at them. Among these people, 50% were junior explorers, 30% were intermediate explorers, and only 10% were advanced explorers and peak-level explorers. There were only 282 semi-venerables. Han Fei glanced at Ganfeng and said, "A slight injury and a major damage to the foundation are 2 different things. Let me test it first." Ganfeng nodded, and Han Fei shouted, "From the junior venerable to the semi-venerable, 20 people each come forward." These explorers knew that they were here for treatment. However, there were still some people who were puzzled. Even the venerables couldn't cure the foundation damage. Even the spirit-gatherer venerables could only repair the foundation one by one, and they couldn't guarantee a complete recovery. Could Han Fei do it? Many people didn't even know Han Fei. After all, this venerable was extremely strange to them. Some people thought, "Is there a hidden venerable behind us?" Soon, 100 people gathered. On Han Fei's body, a milky white halo surged. In the next moment, more than 100 holy beams of light fell from the sky. The momentum of these people was quickly recovering. The slowest one only took 2 minutes, and the beam of light on his body disappeared. And the damage to their foundation had been completely healed. It was also the first time that Ganfeng had seen Han Fei use the apocalyptic divine technique. She was surprised and pleasantly surprised. With this person, the combat power of the human race would soar by at least 30%. Han Fei found that the damage to the foundation of these people was indeed not serious, and it was easier to repair it. He thought that after the effect of the apocalyptic divine technique was doubled, it would take him about 35 years of vitality. But the result was different. He only used 20 years of vitality, which was much better than he expected. And there were 20 semi-venerables in the group of healers just now. In fact, there were less than 3,000 people in the 3 levels of advanced explorers, peak-level explorers, and semi-venerables. In this way, in fact, he only needed to consume about 2,500 years of vitality to cure all these people. And the spiritual fruits that Ganfeng gave him, if they were all of the quality of the previous day, could provide him with at least more than 18,000 years of vitality. In this way, he made a big profit. Han Fei immediately said, "Their damage is not serious enough." 100 people consumed a total of more than 60 years of vitality. Once the semi-venerables are cured, the rest are even easier. If they are all at this level, they can all return to the battlefield in 3 days. Ganfeng's aura fluctuated, and she stared at Han Fei with widened eyes. Really? Han Fei nodded. Of course. I won't return the spiritual fruits. I still have a lot of people waiting for them. Chapter 1563. Han Fei teased. After all, a half-king realm expert naturally knew how much benefit the spiritual fruits he brought could bring. After hearing Han Fei's teasing, Gan Feng let out a long sigh of relief and thought to himself, I've also calculated. Even if Han Fei had some reservations, he couldn't have more than 5,000 spiritual fruits left. Even so, Han Fei was already too amazing. Treating more than 30,000 people was like a piece of cake to him? Was this the legendary path of the King of Humanity? Or was Han Fei really the reincarnation of the King of Humanity? At this moment, Gan Feng wasn't quite sure. She brought 30,000 people, and Han Fei's side had lost 320,000 people. In short, they were all on the same side, so of course he would provide as many spiritual fruits as he could. Gan Feng said in a relaxed mood, No problem. In another 3 days, I'll send another 20,000 spiritual fruits. In that case, I'll be in trouble. Han Fei looked at Gan Feng. Among these people, I think some of them are suspicious. What do you think? Gan Feng smiled faintly. It doesn't matter. I know what to do. Hearing Gan Feng's words, Han Fei didn't ask further. There were spies among these people, and Gan Feng obviously knew who they were. To Han Fei's surprise, there were really a lot of spies in this cage. Perhaps the mermaids and mermen of Black Blood City didn't have the ability to turn into beasts. However, they were very good at turning into humans. This might have something to do with the cultivation techniques they practiced. After Gan Feng left, Han Fei completely turned into a doctor. On the first day, tens of thousands of holy pillars of light descended, shocking everyone on the island. Many people came to watch, wanting to see Han Fei's amazing healing divine technique. During this period, Han Fei found a few spies secretly whispering to each other, but Wang He remained motionless and didn't intend to contact other spies at all. Wang He was not an idiot. Since Han Fei could easily identify the explorer spies on the Island of Death, then none of these explorer spies would be able to escape his detection. These people must have been recorded in a small notebook, but Han Fei didn't mention it. As for why he didn't mention it, that was easy to understand. After all, these people were all Gan Feng's subordinate. If he had to say it, he would say it to Gan Feng. Now that he knew who the spy was, he could make use of it. This kind of thing had happened more than once or twice in the conflict between Black Blood City and Immortal City. Therefore, Wang He would never expose himself under such circumstances. Treating tens of thousands of people a day, this kind of terrifying healing ability had made Han Fei a legend. Throughout the history of the cage, no spirit gatherer had ever had 1% of Han Fei's magical ability. Those who had been saved by Han Fei had completely changed their mentality. After they were cured, they looked at Han Fei as if they were looking at their idol. Therefore, on this day, Han Fei felt that the power of wish was growing. Although there were only a few people, these people were very strong, so even though there were not many of them, Han Fei could still feel the power of wish. This was also very much needed for Han Fei. Actually, the power of will was secondary, as it would eventually be used up. The key was the will of the people. This was what Han Fei needed. The next day, just like the day before, Han Fei treated tens of thousands of people in less than 2 hours. On the third day, it was still the same. 3 days later, Gan Feng delivered another 20,000 spirit fruits, just as he had said. In addition to spiritual fruits, he also gave Han Fei 39 explorer-level sea creatures. From the 4th day, Han Fei began to treat the people he brought to the Firestone Island. These people also knew that Han Fei's treatment required vitality, so under the organization of Long Shi and the others, everyone pooled their resources and gave Han Fei about 3,000 spiritual fruits of life. Although they knew that more than 3,000 spiritual fruits were just a drop in the bucket, this was already the limit of their ability. After all, this was what they had saved up in the past. Some people felt that it was useless to eat them, so they simply didn't eat them. Some people were prepared to use them to save their lives. Since Han Fei now had such a magical healing technique, there was no need to keep these spiritual fruit. 7 days later, on Ganfeng's side, people continued to send spiritual fruits and some explorer level C demonic beasts. These were all willingly given. It could be seen that Han Fei's treatment of everyone was really popular. On Han Fei's side, 50,000 people had been treated one after another. Although only a part of them had been cured, and it was still far from Han Fei's promise, this had already shocked countless people. Because of Han Fei's terrifying healing technique, many people who had been cured clamored to go out to fight, hunt sea demons, and look for spiritual fruits every day, but they were all rejected by Han Fei. On this day, more than 50,000 people waited outside Han Fei's mansion to petition. They knew that Han Fei should have no resources in his hands. At this time, they couldn't expect the resources of the entire front line to be sent to the Firestone Island, so they could only fight for them themselves. Swish! Suddenly, the void shook and Yi Qian appeared. Countless people bowed their heads. Grand Venerable Yi Qian. Yi Qian didn't hesitate and looked directly at Han Fei's hut. The venerable battle has begun. Wow! The array disappeared, and Han Fei appeared directly in front of everyone with a smile on his face. He said lightly, "I've been waiting for this day for a long time." Han Fei said, "No one is allowed to leave the island without my order. When I come back from hunting 2 venerables, I'll find a way to repair your foundation." Hearing Han Fei's words, Wang He was anxious. He had seen Han Fei's strength. What the hell was a mid-level venerable? That was someone who could slaughter a half-king. However, he was only a mid-level venerable on the surface. Therefore, everyone was very confident that Han Fei would hunt 2 venerables. After all, they had all seen Han Fei's skills. Wang He looked around and thought, someone will propose to go together, right? Sure enough, when Wang He was about to speak, someone said, "General Han, do we need to go and help in the venerable battle?" Wang He thought that this suggestion was wrong, so he said, "General Han, there are too few venerables on the front line, which has always been a problem of the Immortal City. Every time there is a venerable battle, the sea demons measure the strength of our side. Let's go and help to boost the morale of the Immortal City." After Wang He said that, even Yi Qian looked at Han Fei. What he said was right. A large part of the reason why Black Blood City hadn't attacked Immortal City was because of the pressure from the Demon Beast Alliance. Over the years, the number of venerables on the front line of the Immortal City had gradually decreased, which had attracted the attention of Black Blood City. However, Han Fei sneered. "Have you forgotten the plan to kill the venerables? Not to mention that the war between the 2 sides hasn't started yet. Even if the war starts, you can still be regarded as a surprise force. Everyone, stay at Firestone Island. Without my order, no one is allowed to leave the island." At that moment, Wang He wanted to say something. However, Han Fei said in a low voice, "After I make a decision, don't try to disobey my military order." Han Fei glanced at Wang He and the other venerables. His power made everyone a little scared. Yes, these days, Han Fei had been treating patients and recovering his spiritual power, so they almost forgot Han Fei's character. Wang He sighed in his heart. Unfortunately, a venerable from Black Blood City is going to die. It seems that I have to do something. I can't be so passive all the time. However, Han Fei was too domineering and didn't give me a chance. On the way, Yi Qian asked, "You know, your existence can't be hidden. In fact, there were even spies trying to find ways to leak information. In the war in the past few days, many spies wanted to go out, but none of them were selected. If we continue to suppress them, they may be alarmed." Han Fei grinned and said, "As soon as I show up, the Black Killer Snail King will definitely be alerted, and the front line of the Immortal City will immediately be under pressure. Of course, the news of my arrival will be released. But when will it be released? Who will release it? I have to decide. Because the journey was very short, Han Fei and Yi Qian had arrived at the fourth island before they had time to say a few words. At this moment, outside the front line, a sea demon venerable was clamoring, "What? You haven't fought a battle of venerables for such a long time. Do you all think that Black Blood City has forgotten your existence? Does anyone dare to come out and fight?" A sea demon venerable set up a battle array and said coldly, "If no one comes out in 100 seconds, don't blame me for challenging you. It's okay if you don't want to fight. As long as the immortal city dares to fight, I will satisfy you." Gan Feng's subordinate. Someone yelled, "How arrogant! Don't forget that I almost killed one of your venerables in the last battle. It's only been a month, and you dare to be so arrogant. Let me kill you." Someone yelled, "I'll do it. Boss Gan, I'll do it. I've reached a bottleneck recently. This is a good opportunity for me to make a breakthrough." Suddenly, a voice came from afar. "I'll do it." The human venerables looked back and were all surprised to see Han Fei. Now, everyone in the venerable realm in the immortal city knew Han Fei. Who didn't know him? Even the explorers whose foundations had been repaired by Han Fei had begun to talk about Han Fei. He repaired the foundations of 30,000 people in 3 days. Such a terrifying spirit-gatherer was the first in the history of the cage. Besides, the fact that Han Fei blew up Chen Xiang with 2 punches was really shocking. It was hard not to know. Therefore, as soon as Han Fei spoke, all the venerables stopped talking. Besides, these people all knew in their hearts that some venerables were going to die today. However, they still couldn't understand why Han Fei made a promise to kill 10 venerables within a year. "You're strong enough, but you keep your words to yourself. Every time you fight, you pretend to barely win, and it's possible to kill 10 venerables within 100 years. However, if you say it out loud, how can the enemy's spies not know?" In fact, they didn't know Han Fei's real purpose at all. Han Fei came to the immortal city with 3 plans. First, to harvest a wave of venerables. Second, to check out the Forbidden Island. And third, to sneak into Black Blood City. At this moment, Han Fei was working hard to realize the first plan. With a swish, Han Fei stood in front of the battlefield. Han Fei walked forward step by step. "Maybe you don't know me, but let me fight in today's venerable battle." Chapter 1564. In front of everyone, Han Fei walked out valiantly and energetically. The realm of an intermediate venerable didn't arouse the slightest suspicion. Han Fei's original realm was only so high. If he forcibly improved it, there was a chance that he could be promoted to the peak of the intermediate venerable. However, he would definitely be stuck in this realm for decades, which was not worth it. Looking at Han Fei coming up, the sea demons were also a little confused. After all, they had fought against the immortal city for tens of thousands of years. If a new venerable was born in the immortal city, he should have shown up on the front line. This Han Fei was not a junior venerable at all, and they had never seen him before. Therefore, many sea demons felt very strange. If Han Fei was a junior venerable, the sea demons might not take him seriously. That meant that he had just become a venerable and was on the front line for the first time. Generally speaking, this kind of situation often happened in the long history. After all, someone would always advance to the venerable realm. However, this Han Fei was an intermediate venerable, which was puzzling. How could there be an unknown intermediate venerable on the human side? Where did he come from? Why didn't the undercover report his information? At this moment, as soon as Han Fei came up, he immediately attracted the attention of many sea demons. A sea demon venerable shouted, "Hey! A newcomer? Who are you? I don't remember there being a person like you in the immortal city." Han Fei tilted his head and looked at the person who spoke. "You underestimate the immortal city if you know everything. Besides, who do you think you are? Do you think you're qualified to know me? Bastard! You're courting death." Han Fei smiled contemptuously. "All these years, I haven't seen your Black Blood City take advantage of the Immortal City. You said I'm courting death? Do you dare to fight me? Why not? Wait. Just as the sea demon was about to come up, a half-king suddenly spoke. This person sneered. Young man, you need to hone yourself. A newcomer who hasn't reached the peak of the intermediate level can't understand the power of the peak. You Auhai, go and meet this person. Under the half-king's tent, a half-mermaid who had 3 bulges on his head and a strong body stood out with 2 big spears in his hands. Yu Auhai, this name sounded quite domineering. At this moment Yu Auhai bared his fangs and shouted, Human, it's not too late for you to admit defeat and scram. Otherwise, we won't be able to go back. Han Fei's face slightly changed, and he looked back at Gan Feng. This action seemed to be seeking Gan Feng's opinion. Gan Feng naturally understood what Han Fei meant. In front of everyone, she nodded slightly at Han Fei. Han Fei smiled, then turned around and said with a smile, How can the glory of the human race be lost in my hands? Fight. At this moment, the sea demons didn't know that the 3 half-king realm experts of the Immortal City were closely monitoring the situation. Apart from Han Fei's subordinates, only the Venerables knew that Han Fei had defeated Qin Xiang. At this moment, Han Fei's subordinates were all on the Firestone Island. In that case, if something unexpected were to happen, it would mean that there was a traitor among the Venerable Realm experts. In fact, Han Fei was confident to identify traitors in the Venerable Realm. However, asking him to find them one by one? Obviously, this was not very realistic. After all, what was a Venerable One? Did they have nothing better to do? You're a newcomer and you want to meet me. Do I have to meet you? Therefore, Han Fei did not intend to meet all the Venerables one by one. That was really unrealistic. If he did so, it would be easy to alert the enemy. Although there were many sea demon spies among those explorers. However, these people wanted to tip off the Venerable Realm. It was much more difficult than being a Venerable. As long as they were not allowed to go to the battlefield, they wouldn't be able to send any news out unless they wanted to die. At this time, Han Fei was not worried that there would be any problems in this battle. Earlier, after Han Fei treated the wounded, he specially met Gan Feng. The two of them had reached an agreement on the issue of spies. Gan Feng exchanged the information she had with Han Fei at that time. Then, at the moment when Han Fei entered the battlefield, the battle was like an arrow on the bowstring. The two sides were about to fight. Suddenly, on the human side, a half-venerable realm expert suddenly burst out and roared, This person is the strongest spirit gatherer of the human race. He saved BEM. Before this person finished speaking, a big hand had already grasped him. Bang! A loud explosion was heard, and the surrounding sound was quickly isolated. A half-venerable was actually a spy and directly sacrificed himself to expose Han Fei's identity. Gan Feng's face suddenly changed and she glanced around, scaring countless people. Someone secretly cursed, F***CK. How can there be a spy among the half-venerables? Someone was shocked. Zhou Yu is my good friend. How did he become a spy? It's over, this time they will definitely find out about me. When the half-venerable realm expert was angry, the whole scene fell silent. At this moment, even if another half-venerable realm expert wanted to shout, he would probably be squeezed to death by the half-venerable realm expert. On the sea demon side, the half-venerable realm expert sat on the throne of waves, looking at the field coldly. The strongest spirit gatherer of the human race? I see. No wonder this person has never shown up in front of others, because this kind of person doesn't need to show up at all. However, this half-venerable realm expert was slightly puzzled. The strongest spirit gatherer is just a spirit gatherer. Why does a spirit gatherer have to fight in front of others? Although he couldn't tell what was different about Han Fei, the half-venerable realm expert still reminded him. However, the half-king still reminded, Yu Auhai, don't hold back. Go all out. Han Fei's face became gloomy, but he was overjoyed in his heart. Although he didn't intend to hide his identity for long, Ganfeng's operation was indeed very good. As soon as Yu Aohai heard the half-venerable realm expert's order, he immediately roared and jumped up. Lightning fell from the sky and poured into two big spears, stabbing directly at Han Fei. Behind the humans, at the moment when Yu Aohai jumped up, a venerable reminded Han Fei, "Be careful, those are thunder spears, which can turn into lightning." However, Han Fei didn't move. Since he had come out as a spirit gatherer, of course he had to put on a show. Han Fei raised one hand, and a large array of more than 10 meters under his feet instantly condensed. An old turtle was lying on the ground, vivid and lifelike. Qilu clang, clang, clang in an instant, tens of millions of thunder spears bombarded Han Fei's coiled turtle array. However, when one array was about to be shattered, Han Fei stomped and another coiled turtle array appeared. Hiss! Behind the humans, a spirit gatherer exclaimed, "Damn, is the coiled turtle array so strong?" A venerable who was both a spirit gatherer and a soul warrior was dumbfounded. "Did I learn the wrong way?" Seeing that Han Fei's shield was so strong that his endless lightning couldn't penetrate it, Yu Aohai roared and the two spears reappeared in his hands. This time, he soared into the sky. The next moment, the raging waves surged to the sky. In the seawater, a pair of scarlet eyes appeared, which was this person's associated spirit. Thunder technique. As soon as the black shadow opened its mouth, a thick thunderbolt was shot out. However, this thunderbolt didn't blast at Han Fei, but at Yu Aohai. Yu Aohai was hit, but in the thousands of meters of seawater, he turned into a water giant hundreds of meters high and thrust his two spears at the sky. At that moment, many people on the human side were shocked. Someone exclaimed, "Not good." Yu Aohai's attack, combined with the power of his associated spirit, has reached the advanced venerable realm. Someone roared, "Watch out!" Of course, most of the people who were shouting were explorers. The supreme expert's expressions were merely changing. They were all acting. Although Yu Aohai's attack seemed fierce, but no matter how fierce he was, could he be more fierce than Qinxiang? Even Qinxiang was blown up by Han Fei's two attacks. Yu Aohai was nothing. In the distance, Qinxiang came to watch the battle in person. At this moment, her face was as cold as ice, completely indifferent to the battle in front of her. BM. At that moment, Han Fei stepped on 3 coiled turtle arrays and put on spiritual armor. Crack, crack, crack. However, after one blow, facing the endless power, Han Fei's arrays persisted for 10 minutes before they were broken. At that moment, Han Fei was hit by the thunderbolt, and a deep pit with a range of more than 500 meters appeared on the surface of the sea. Good job. What the hell? A mere spirit gatherer dares to fight on the front line? Is there no one else in the human race? Seeing this, the corners of Yu Aohai's mouth curled into a smile as he charged forward with his spear. However, just as Yu Aohai stepped on the surface of the sea, all of a sudden, the sea demon half-king sat up straight. Within a kilometer of Yu Aohai, a complex array suddenly appeared. Sizzle! Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. At that moment, endless thunderbolts turned into knife light, wrapped in a layer of golden light, and in an instant, a storm was stirred up in the array. Puff, puff, puff. At that moment, Yu Aohai was instantly twisted into a skeleton, and there was no flesh or blood left on his body. You know I'm a spirit gatherer, but you still dare to underestimate me? Who will die if you don't? Han Fei's voice rang out leisurely. At that moment, Han Fei floated up from the water, and a holy light enveloped him. The cracks all over his body were shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. After only a few minutes, Han Fei's ruined body had been restored to its original state. Han Fei smiled faintly. Since you're good at using thunderbolts, you can die in thunderbolts. The conditions to use this thunder deity slaying array are extremely harsh. There must be a lot of power of thunderbolt. I'll try it on you. The sea demon half-king instantly got up and shouted in a low voice, "Let's call it a day." However, Han Fei stretched out his hand and a thunderbolt knife light seemed to be pulled out from the void. Boom! That knife light shattered Yu Aohai's bones. His soul had long been locked by Han Fei's void lines. At this moment, Han Fei had taken a sip. A red crack appeared in the sky, dark clouds gathered, and blood dripped down. Han Fei tilted his head to look at the sea demon half-king and said leisurely, "What did you just shout?" Chapter 1565. Yu Aohai's death was the consensus of all human venerables. In their view, Yu Aohai fought against a half-king with the power of a peak-level intermediate venerable. Who would die if he didn't? But Han Fei pretended to be so strong? It seemed that he had been crippled, however. As the strongest spirit gatherer of the human race, Han Fei's injuries were healed in an instant, and there wasn't even the slightest injury on his body. "Ho! Sea demon scoundrel, look, this is the strength of our human race." "Ah! Are you dumbfounded? Do you know that our human race has such a powerful spirit gatherer? Wow! Since when did our immortal city have such a strong master?" It turns out that this is the real strength of a spirit gatherer. He can't be killed at all. In the noise behind, Han Fei absorbed a lot of ownerless souls. After consuming his soul power again, he was less than 5,000 points away from full recovery. As long as he slaughtered 4 more, he should be able to make up for it. As for vitality, Han Fei had already made up for it. However, when he went back this time, Han Fei planned to claim that his vitality was insufficient. In this way, he could get some spiritual fruits and heal tens of thousands of people. The sea demon half-king didn't expect that a spirit gatherer's killing means could be so powerful. Yu Aohai's physique was not weak. However, he couldn't even block a lightning blade. The problem was that Yu Aohai was extremely good at lightning fighting. However, he was killed by the lightning blade in the end. How could people not be shocked? At this moment, many people looked up at the sky and watched the blood rain pouring down. Many people slightly breathed a sigh of relief. In the past few decades, human beings had not been able to kill sea demon venerables. After all, it had always been sea demons suppressing human beings. On the human side, those who should have appeared had already appeared. These venerables of Black Blood City were very familiar with the combat power of the venerables of the human race. At this moment, Han Fei appeared as a brand new character with many means. Before, when facing Chen Xiang, he used pure fighting methods, and everyone could feel the ferocious power from Han Fei. However, this time, Han Fei killed a powerhouse at the peak of the intermediate venerable realm with the help of a formation. Perhaps for those explorers, Han Fei's battle wasn't easy. It was even thrilling. However, in the eyes of the human venerables, killing a venerable was as easy as taking a stroll in the park. Han Fei's expression was calm as he calmly looked at the half-sea demon king. He spoke with confidence and assurance amidst the splashing seawater and the boundless curtain of rain. "Look, my undying city isn't that weak, and Black Blood City isn't that strong. You haven't seen a spirit gatherer in action before. Today I'll show you and let you know that you are all garbage." While saying this, Han Fei waved his hand casually, and the rolling waves collapsed, and the sea gradually calmed down. At that moment, Han Fei stood alone in the raging sea. One person seemed to have formed his own battle line, extremely valiant. Looking at this scene, Chen Xiang had a strange thought in her heart. Yes, even at this moment, she still didn't think Han Fei looked like a commander. A commander should observe the overall situation and devise strategies. A general should command the army and fight everywhere, brave and invincible. A soldier should charge and break through enemy lines, attack cities and seize territory. It could be said that a soldier should do his best, a general should do his best, and a commander should do his best. But Han Fei didn't have any of these three. Chen Xiang suddenly thought of something. According to the news from the Undying City, Han Fei regarded himself as a human king. What if this is true? This idea just flashed in Chen Xiang's mind, and she didn't think about it deeply. At this moment, Han Fei was still standing in the sea, looking straight at the half-sea demon king. I won't leave today. An intermediate venerable realm expert will not refuse anyone. No matter who it is, I will fight. Han Fei put his hands behind his back and held his head high. After a pause, Han Fei grinned. Want to kill me? Maybe you only have this chance. If no one comes, I'm leaving. Many sea demon venerables frowned. This man was too evil. How long had it been since Yu Aohai attacked? He was killed by a knife. More importantly, this man was unparalleled in arrays and could heal himself. He must have a strong explosive force that could blow him up in one round. Han Fei waited for another 2 minutes, glanced at the sea demon camp and said disdainfully, "A bunch of trash, how dare you try to attack the human race, stop." Suddenly, the void was torn apart, and a long-haired young man in heavy armor crawled out of the void. Yes, he crawled out. The man's lower body had a total of 8 tentacles, like a spider, but with armor as thick as a crab's shell. The upper body was human, wearing armor that was so thick that it could be used as a shield. Hiss! When they saw this man, countless explorers on the human side gasped. It's the crab eater. He's a lunatic. Someone said angrily, F***ck, why did this thing come out? He eats everything. Everyone who is defeated by him is eaten by him. An undying shouted, "Kill him." A human venerable deliberately said to him via voice transmission, "Shall we stop here today? This man has a special identity. He has the bloodline of an ancient king crab and has amazing defensive power." The great path, the sea demon shook the void and shattered the voice coming from the human side. He said coldly, "Don't you think it's too late to say something at the last minute?" The crab eater sneered and said, "A human spirit gatherer? I heard that you are an intermediate venerable and you don't refuse anyone?" Han Fei shrugged slightly. "I said that I don't refuse anyone." The crab eater's claws pierced the void and approached Han Fei a little. Because the speed at which his claws plunged into the void was too fast, every movement of his claws could create flames from the friction with the air. It was as if he was walking on fire. Han Fei raised his hand, and a spiritual energy storm formed above his body. Han Fei said, "Crab, it should taste good." Humph! Hardly had Han Fei said that when thousands of thorns pierced out of thin air from the void. Clank, 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 however, at the moment those thorn shadows appeared on Han Fei's body, an armor shield flew. The Taoist patterned 6 spirit armor appeared out of thin air. 2 on the sea surface, a series of arrays appeared. In a breath's time, dozens of arrays appeared at a speed that was so fast that it was dazzling to the eyes. The coiled turtle array, the soul-driving array, the spirit-gathering array, the 6 spirit armor. There were also some lines that Han Fei couldn't understand, swimming in the sea. He didn't know what they were for. Han Fei still had his hands behind his back and said with a faint smile, "I heard that you are very powerful? I'd like to see how powerful a crab can be." Hey, the crab eater was so fast that his body disappeared, and he began to circle around Han Fei. As it spun, 2 bodies came out. Han Fei sensed it and found it was a bit like the Gemini divine technique. One was the original body, the other was a shadow, but in terms of strength, the 2 didn't seem to be weakened. Han Fei immediately understood that this person had a special ability that allowed him to have 2 bodies. It was also a bit similar to Zhang Xuanyu's triple original body. However, no matter which one it was not as powerful as his Gemini divine technique. If he were to use the Gemini divine technique, this crab-eater demon would be able to bite him to death. Han Fei stepped on the sea and saw a giant turtle 1,000 feet high lying across the sea. The giant turtle roared and the array was mysterious. Han Fei said lightly, "I don't know who gave you the courage to think that you can compete with me? Ha! Arrogant human, you are indeed unparalleled in arrays. However, there are thousands of great Daos in this world. How many can you defend with arrays? You want to break all arrays with one? Humph! I don't believe it. The shadow crab eater turned into a shadow, ignored the array, and directly grabbed Han Fei's shadow. At the moment when the shadow passed through the array, Han Fei frowned slightly, took out the embroidery needle, and made a gesture of preparing to attack. However, it never occurred to Han Fei that the shadow didn't touch his body. Instead, it only touched his shadow, yet it was able to confront his soul. The venerables on the sea demon's side all smiled when they saw Han Fei's shadow being caught. This time, there's no way to save him. The great path of the crab eater, eating shadow. Even if Han Fei knew it, he would be caught unknowingly, let alone Han Fei who didn't know. The next moment, Han Fei was completely motionless. The crab eater chuckled. See, I was right, wasn't I? You have to pay for your ignorance. The 10 blades of the crab eater rotated and drilled through Han Fei's great plate turtle array. After all, this was a defensive array designed to resist peak-level intermediate venerables. As long as the attack was strong enough, it would always be broken. Just when the 10 cone-shaped crab claws were only 10 meters away from Han Fei suddenly made a stabbing gesture. Bm, a round hole was blasted out of the crab eater's body. A large swath of blue divine souls was blasted out by Han Fei. What a pity! Boom! In the sky, another red crack appeared, and the range of the blood rain expanded. The crab eater was so excited that he didn't even know why he was stabbed to death by Han Fei's spear. This was probably the most wronged guy in Black Blood City so far. He thought that the enemy would die in his hands in the next second. However, the result was exactly the opposite. Han Fei grabbed the corpse of the crab eater and the sun moon shell, threw them into Forge the Universe, and said flatly, "King Crab? It should taste good." Everyone. The faint smile on the sea demon half-king's face suddenly froze, and he stepped to the edge of the battlefield. Who the hell are you? Han Fei glanced at him indifferently and suddenly grinned. Me. I want to challenge higher levels. Do any of you sea demons dare to fight me? The half-king suddenly thought of one thing. A few years ago, an incident happened in the Demon-Beast Alliance. A man named Bull Demon King killed 7 sea demons in 3 battles. Even the momentum in Black Blood City at that time was weakened. Today, he suddenly felt something. The sea demon half-king shouted, "Who the hell are you?" At this time, Han Fei also knew that he couldn't fight anymore. If the people of Black Blood City were still fooled at this time, they would be stupid. Han Fei raised his head slightly. My name is Han Fei.